Good morning, good evening, and in my case, good night, everyone. Welcome to our show match between the Card Guys and Team Blue Pitch. It's kind of a tradition at this point with every set releasing. I'm Shamir Sami, and I'm joined by the wonderful Ellie Bird, a titan of the Fab Sphere. Ellie, how you doing?
I'm doing good. I'm doing good. I woke up sick this morning after spending all of yesterday doing paperwork, so I'm as good as I can be in that context. I'm stoked. New set is out, and as usual, we're here with the show match, which is kind of my favorite place to see some low stakes, high octane games of flesh and blood at the start of a new set season.
Absolutely a wonderful place to be starting. And what a set that we have picked to be investigating today. We have the Compendium of Rathe, not only a set chock full of reprints for our new players entering the Fab community and those who are still building up their collections, but a set with just about every card frame that has ever been printed. In other words, a card for every hero that has been in Flesh and Blood so far. So we have a huge variety of new cards to investigate that we're going to see over the course of our match today. Ellie, what have you thought of the set? How are you feeling about it now that we've gotten to see it all, even play some of the cards at the world premiere just this last weekend?
I like the set, but also last night everyone locally was kind of ripping some of their products. Person to my left opened Extended Art Tunic. Person to my right opened Eye of Ophidia, and my Antiquity pack was a Scar for a Scar Amnesia. So actually, it's the worst set ever released. But
True.
I'm pretty fond. I think it's really cool that they touched on. You've mentioned every cardboarder. Are there any cardboarders they didn't print something for? I don't actually.
I
I've been
was
a little bit
I was
curious
trying to
about
think
that.
about this.
I think they touched on literally everything. There's an Ice Wizard card. There's an Earth Runeblade card. There's a Lightning Runeblade. Yeah, I do think they literally touched on everything, which I guess was the premise of the set, but didn't necessarily think about. Really cool set. I like it a lot. I like that for the most part. I think like none of the cards are obviously intentionally bad. I think there are some cards that feel like plants. Like I think there are a fair few cards in the set that are like, okay, this isn't good now, but this obviously does something powerful in a future hero, like Hala or whatever's going on with those shadow cards. But I don't know. I'm really fond. I think it's an exciting set and has a lot of implications both for Classic Constructed and the other format in our show match tonight, the newly launched Silver Age.
Indeed, what a segue into looking at our format for this evening. Indeed, Compendium of Rathe is all out supporting Flesh and Blood's newest budget format, Silver Age, where only commons and rares are legal. Your $20 ticket to the world tour, as they say. And in this case, we have a mixture of both classic constructed games and Silver Age games for us to investigate the set. So let's get a quick look at what we have coming up over the course of the day. We're going to be alternating between games Classic Constructed and Silver Age, 5 rounds in total. And of course, regardless of the result as we go through, we will be playing out all 5 games tonight, folks. So make sure that you stay to them all. We'll be starting up with a game of Classic Constructed between Andrew Cook and Jack Tang, looking at Phi, one of the newest kind of heavy hitters of the format, kind of risen from the ashes with so many of the new cards coming out of Compendium of Wraith, and Rhinar, who admittedly was not on my radar for decks to be investigated out of Compendium, but he got access to a pretty sweet new common. So let's jump over to these deck lists, having a look at Andrew Cook's Phi deck list to start with. Ellie, what is there to say about Phi? I mean, Phi's been dead for years. I thought he'd allowed by now. What's he doing here?
I think that like it's kind of interesting. I think Phi was actually pretty good post hunted. I took him to Worlds and had a pretty solid run on him. I really enjoy the hero, so I'm stoked to see him get some support. But something about that new card they printed, Art of the Phoenix War, looks a little bit familiar, which is pretty interesting and exciting. It's kind of Art of War with extra steps, though. I think the hoop you have to jump through is also upside in the sense that it doesn't take your Phoenix Flame out of the deck, which is pretty interesting and exciting. I also just think he's kind of powerful in a way that Flesh and Blood decks have not really been allowed to be powerful for a little bit here. You know, you are drawing cards, you are playing these exponential effects where your turn gets bigger and bigger and bigger with the more cards you draw. not notably in Andrew's deck here, we're seeing Old Knocker, bit of a throwback to some of those classic Blossom of Spring, Art of War Fi decks back from the Uprising immediately came out era before Stubbies got banned, where the thing that mattered the most was just ripping the Art of War turn as soon as possible. Also, I think most of this looks like somewhat quote-unquote stock. There's definitely quite a few Compendium cards in here that are obviously going to bolster the Draconic Ninja's arsenal. You see Phoenix Bannerman Head, kind of a neat little 0-card 1 that goes and gets you a Phoenix Flame. Hard to complain about that, as well as Become the Bottle Blue. A little bit of spice going on there in the resource base.
Indeed, not just in blue, but in red as well. That's kind of the card that I want to draw attention to here, because we might be wondering, why would Fi want cards to become a specific name? If we peek a little bit further down the reds, we come across an old Majestic that people have been trying to make work in Fi for a very long time. 3 copies of Phoenix Form. So I hope we get to see a little bit of kind of combo Fi action, where not only is an Art of War in played, and also the new card Fire That Burns Within. That card is so underrated, unbelievably powerful for a rare. But we hopefully get to see a little bit of Phoenix Form action as well. Meanwhile, having a look at Jack's list, what's Rhinar picked up out of Compendium? There's one card which I really want to draw attention to here, which I think we might be playing some copies. Well, let's have a look at it together. Let's see what we've got. It's a Rush Bellow, although I know that there's quite a few cards coming up out of Super Slam in this deck. Buck Wild being a really big and important one. We see some more reliable, some pulpings. 3 copies of Rolling Thunder. There's a card I haven't seen in a long time. We are truly embracing the brute life here and just saying our reds are going to give us variable value, but I mean, sometimes that's going to be a 1 for 6 with Go Again. What do you think about Rhinar in a post-compendium world, Ellie?
I do think the new card they printed for him is pretty strong. Aggressive Pounce, the Brutal Assault stat line, 2 for 4, 5, 6, blue, yellow, red. And it has Go Again if you've intimidated this turn, which is like obviously very targeted Rhinar support. It's very much a like, how do we give more brutes more Go Again without making KO better? And the answer is to make it care about intimidate. But actually none in Jack's deck here. Fair bit of dice rolling action, which I think the rugged roller in the arena card section tells you a lot about what's going on there. Maybe a little bit zanier, but also who knows? Maybe he's cracked it, and we're all just here to bear witness. That is a compendium card lying in the blue base. The Reckless Arithmetic.
Indeed, I think I can see the reason for the rugged roller in there, and it's for access to just one more of those blue 6s in the form of Rock Yard Rodeo, which is just giving us maybe access to a little bit more consistency. This is a pretty spicy take on Rhinar. I was with you at first thinking like Aggressive Pounce was the reason to be doing Rhinar post-compendia, but actually I think Jack has taken on a pretty different perspective on the hero, and I'm quite excited to see how that pans out. But with all that said, folks, let's keep you waiting no longer. It's time to make our way over to the floor and see what is happening in the game. Our players are just about ready to go. And it looks like we've got equipment flipping to start with. We do indeed see the rugged roller in play. Apex Bonebreaker going with the full armor suite possible from Rhinar. Meanwhile, that fully aggressive package of equipment that we see from Fi, Mask of the Pouncing Legs combined with Old Knocker, we are not expecting this game to go very long.
I kind of think we're not really expecting many of our games to go long tonight. I don't know if you saw the set of 5 matchups, but between it being 3 CC, 2 Silver Age, and largely a bunch of pretty aggressive matchups, I think this might be one of the shortest show matches yet, obviously barring the famous Zen game heard round the world.
Heard round the world, indeed. A slightly different era of Flesh and Blood, filled with Art of Wars and tomes and drawing cards. But we will be seeing some cards drawn today, I hope, courtesy of that Art of the Phoenix War. Our players considering what they want to take for their first actions of the game.
I believe we have Andrew Cook on Fi going first. Looks like he's just gonna do some hand filtering, shipping off that Searing Emberblade, pitching away 2 reds. Maybe not the start you want to see.
Indeed, a bit of a tough spot, giving Jack the opportunity to filter his own hand a little bit on defense. But I mean, sometimes you look at a hand of 5 cards and say, you know what, I just cannot convert this. Either I get lucky and draw the blue, but I don't know if I can even take that risk. I just need to get these cards out of my hand. Seeing a fire that burns will then head towards the bottom of the deck is a little bit sad given the power of the deck. And I wonder if Andrew will notice that we seem to be missing a pretty critical card for Fi at some point. I don't
Oh yeah,
spy a
his
Phoenix
Phoenix Flame
Flame
is
anywhere
not
in
in
my
the
graveyard.
graveyard. I played a game at Worlds on Fi, the messiest game of Flesh and Blood I've played in my life. I played against a Kasai. We were both 4-0 in CC last round of CC day one. And I forgot my Phoenix Flame, and he missed like 3 Dynamo triggers until I drew my Phoenix Flame because we were both just so nervous about being X and O. It was a very sloppy, very entertaining game that lives on in my heart.
It sounds like it might have been a good time, and both of our players here are investigating the trials and tribulations of their heroes. Andrew finally picking out that Phoenix Flame, and Jack making a little theatrical roll of the dice there. I wonder if it might have been for his Scabskin Leathers, and I certainly hope it wasn't because he rolled a 1, folks, which is not the brute life, or perhaps it very much is the brute life.
I think rolling ones is the brute life. You live by the dice, you die by the dice. It does look like he rolled 1 and passed the turn back over to Andrew.
Okay, giving Andrew the access to full tempo, having filtered his hand a little bit, chosen a card to arsenal. This could be the beginning of one of those explosive 5 turns that we all saw so much about, but it always begins with a humble head jab, rising resentment to kick off the turn.
3 go again on offer. Going to be met pretty instantaneously by a block from Send Packing, just covering up 3, maybe denying something like an early Lynx. This Rising Resentment doesn't necessarily have an on hit yet, but if Jack just wants to block before it's no longer an option to him, now's a good time to do so.
Indeed, and I will say that even though this Rising Resentment does have an on hit now, I got the chance to play Fi over the world premiere weekend in London, and one of the things that I realized I kind of missed most about Draconic Ninja was the feeling that your cards had real on hits before you got to your finishers and before you got to effects like kind of marking from Syndra and obviously the old mass momentum chains that Syndra is so strong at keeping going. Seeing a card like Rising Resentment giving you the chance to maybe discount your cards or Mounting Anger to push a little bit more damage is nice to see back in the format. But Fry is at a rip-roaring pace here. We see an Ignite, which later on discounts a swing of the Emberblade for 3, a Phoenix Form for 2, Become the Bottle, which will no doubt be naming Phoenix Flame here. Could we already be seeing that Phoenix Form turn coming up?
Curious for sure. Pretty hard for the Phoenix Form to ever connect while Jack still has all of his armor, but he is 7 life down, looking at a fair bit of damage. So even if it just comes in as a 0 for 5, it's hard to complain about. What I will say is interesting about Rising Resentment in this matchup is Scowling Fleshbag. If Andrew banishes a card despite not getting an actual discount, banishing a 0 cost to Rising Resentment, it does let him insulate himself from Scowling Fleshbag a little bit.
Indeed, that's actually a really powerful point to take note of. We see a pretty atypical Rhinar card hit the field, a test of agility. I don't know about you, Ellie, but I have not seen this card since I was playing Heavy Hitters Limited. Good old 4-block that clashes with the attacking hero. In this case, Fi winning the clash, getting access to an agility, which I'm sure he will make absolutely brilliant use of. He probably won't, because most of his attacks have go again to begin with.
It's like no Phoenix Form, just a simple head jab, head jab, head jab, head jab, and wouldn't you guess it, another head jab kind of turn. Over to Jack, 3 cards to work with, and I think we're just rolling scabs off the rip yet again.
Living that brute life, folks. You don't come up to a match with High Roller and don't expect to roll Scabskins. In this case, we are a little bit more rewarded, rolling a 5 on those Scabskin Leathers after gaining access to 2 action points. Our first one seems to be spent on a card that has Go Again to begin with. Good old Rolling Thunder. Let's see if we can roll a little higher on this one. Maybe get that 6 to be able to swing the High Roller. A 4. Getting a 1 for 4 Go Again in Brute is a pretty decent rate, and followed up by one of those gigantic attacks from Super Slam. Show of Strength, in this case coming in for 12 damage. And I get the feeling that Fi is not going to have many 6 power attacks to try and reduce its efficacy.
Nope, he's actually going to instead give those boots up instantly and take 11. Hard to complain about a 3-card 12 in the grand scheme of things in Flesh and Blood, but when your goal was obviously to swing that rugged roller, can't help but shake a little bit of disappointment off as you pass over to your opponent's turn.
Fly's agility pops, considering what might be this first chain link. It could be indeed that inflame that we saw on the top, just coming in for a measly 1 with go again. Unless, could we be seeing, we're seeing Phi activated in response to the trigger, seemingly.
Paying
pick up the
2
Phoenix
and
Flame,
using
and
the
then
1.
Here we go. It's time for one of those Art of War turns, Ellie. We are discarding that Phoenix Flame immediately, drawing 2 cards, and then finally letting the Inflame trigger resolve to actually pick up that Phoenix Flame proper and be able to send it on this gigantic Art of War turn.
Lot of cards in hand, I'll say that. But this is a 1-card 2. Until we see what the Art of War has drawn us, we have not necessarily done anything so incredibly powerful, and Jack pretty immediately snapping off the Scowling Flesh Bag block to reduce the size of the hand here. And since he knows that there is a Phoenix Flame in Andrew's hand, this could actually be a pretty powerful Scowling. If he wins that 1 and 5, setting aside that Phoenix Flame can do a lot of hurt.
It looks like, wait a minute, Ellie, are we back to the
Double
old
Art of
days
War?
of double Art of War turns, folks? This is, I pray you do not come across these at your pro quests coming up soon, because these are the kinds of turns that make you quake in your boots a little bit. I can see why Andrew wanted to take this line of sequencing now, because the value in picking up that Phoenix Flame from the Inflame ability just to discard it yet again to a second Art of the Phoenix War. We are going to get all of our attack actions getting +2 over the course of this turn. The Phi activation has been spent, so we're probably not seeing that Phoenix Flame end up in the hand through this turn cycle, but there are still 4 cards to work with after this Intimidate, which are all going to get +2 each as long as Andrew is able to send them.
And as long as they're Draconic.
Indeed, I suppose we could see some of those become the bottles come back and haunt us, although our players are struggling to intimidate a card here.
This is a technical difficulties o'clock a little bit.
This is just tabletop simulator things.
This is why clears throat. Nothing compares to playing the game of Flesh and Blood in the Flesh and Blood.
That's the line, Ellie. We love to hear it. And you'll have many opportunities to do so, I hope, for all of our audience at the ProQuest events coming up in the near future, alongside the World Tour, where you'll get the chance to play both Classic Constructed and Silver Age with all of these amazing new cards. It seems like we've resolved that Intimidate successfully. So Andrew is just thinking about what his next action on this turn might be. I think we have to resolve the damage on the Inflame still. Waiting for that 1 damage to go through over the top of the Scowling Flesh Bag, and then we are clear to proceed with our next attack on this combat chain.
So a rake of
It doesn't stop
nipples.
there, Ellie. It doesn't stop there. We seem to have more force amplifiers just pouring out of our ears as Phi, in this case, Rake Over the Coals, giving yet another +1 to all of our Draconic attacks. We'd really better hope these last 3 cards in hand are all playable Draconic attacks at this point, or it will be a slightly underwhelming turn of force amplifiers. But time will tell, and Andrew Cook will certainly tell us as he lays his hand down on this massive combo turn. We're seeing the Pouncing Links popped immediately by the looks of it, knowing exactly what he wants to fetch. Is it going to be an Ignite to generate some resources on this turn? Is it going to be a Lava Burst to be a gigantic finisher at the end of it? Who knows?
Well,
one
probably
person's about to. Yeah, I would hope that one person does at least, and that one person should be Andrew.
I would hope at least one person does. This just reminds me of getting double Saber bloodshedded. That's
It's
how I
true.
feel
I
right
guess
now, emotionally.
we're saying that Fab has you mentioned that Fab was in a kind of different era of power level in the 5 days, but in some ways can leave all of it behind. Saber Bloodshed is certainly one heck of a card that we might not be seeing a lot of today, but I've certainly seen my fair share of across the table over the last few seasons of competitive play.
I feel like I had a lot of that revelation somewhat recently, where I was kind of under the impression for a little bit. Also, Inflame is a really, really wild search off of Link's. Definitely curious to see what he snaps off there. Perhaps he has multiple Phoenix forms in the hand, and this just generates that much value. I believe this should be coming in for 5 Shugo Trigger all said and done. Picking up the Phoenix Flame yet again.
It's kind of incredible to see a situation where fetching an Inflame off your Master of the Pouncing Links actually turns out to be more value than if you just fetch something like a Lava Burst. But in this case, it is actually going to turn out that way, I think, because that Inflame comes in for 5, as you mentioned. The Phoenix Flame comes in for 4 afterwards. Whereas if we manage to fetch that Lava Burst, it still only ends up coming in for. Actually,
Yeah,
having
it's
said
2
that, it would have
channels.
come in for 9 because of the Shuko trigger in itself, wouldn't it? Unless, oh, here we go. Here we go, folks. It is Phoenix form time, coming in for a
7.
whopping 8.
Oh,
We
8,
go
8,
again.
yeah.
Getting
3
+3
plus.
across the turn from all of the effects. Sadly, no on-hit effect in play. Could you imagine the thought of drawing 2 additional cards on this turn? It would be absolutely egregious, this kind of a turn. But we are still seeing a 0 for 8 with Go Again, and who knows what kind of finisher might be lurking in Andrew's hand to finish off this turn. Jack, considering
Pretty
just how much armor do I
unlikely.
need?
Yeah, big old brute fridge makes the on-hit of Phoenix form pretty unlikely to connect in the aggregate, but it does look like this is going to buy a fair bit of armor. Clash of Agility blocked with. Gonna see another one of those slightly unorthodox clash cards hitting the table here.
Once again, hoping for just a few more action, but a little bit more Go Again to maybe roll Scab Skin Leathers one more time and see if we can swing a high roller.
Why are we flipping? What's going on? Why are we flipping 2 cards here? There's 2 cards.
I think we're just having a little bit of latency over here. Jack kind of trying to navigate Tabletop Simulator as we all know and love. And once again, apparently Brutes
Agility
can't win
token
clashes to save
donated.
lives either. Donating an agility to Phi, who no doubt will once again make incredible use of it, just the way he did on this turn by using it on attack with Go Again.
Of course. That's what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to use agilities to make go again.
True, I do like Go Again again. One of my favorite things to do in Flesh and Blood.
To go again.
It looks like that does mark the end of Andrew's big turn. Putting that card that was Intimidated, which we got a little peek at, looked like it might have been Phoenix form, into Arsenal. Maybe that last card in hand being a 1 cost or something a little bit trickier to convert. Even with an IP run at the end of that turn, and look at the life totals at the end of that, Ellie. Just Rhinar decimated down to 18 life after being left with, even leaving their opponent with 2 cards in hand at the end of the turn. I mean,
I was going to
just
say,
audible
it's
things,
maybe
folks.
not as explosive as the 5 player would have liked here, but an 11 life lead is definitely the situation you want to be in a matchup like this. I feel like that's kind of Rhinar's classic Achilles heel, is he's very explosive when he's allowed to do as much blocking as he would like, but when a deck goes sufficiently wide and kind of exploits the acceptable amount of cards that Rhinar is willing to give up, things start to get a little bit sketchy pretty quickly. And though this is a pretty reasonable return on rate, a 2-card 9 swing big with a might attached, I don't really expect Phi to care whether he's at 29 life or 10 life. Last life point is the only one that matters to Phi.
Indeed. We're not going to see a lot of blocking unless this hand is truly non-functional. And to be honest, it's pretty hard for that hand to be non-functional when Rhinar has additionally donated that agility token, because even if you found yourself playing cards like Lava Vein Loyalty or I don't even hot on their heel, things like that, well, it turns out they can become starters when you have access to that agility token.
Also lead with Emberblade, all things considered.
Indeed. Many ways to navigate through this turn where it's pretty hard to brick, and thus, as you say, if Phi doesn't brick, Phi ain't blocking.
Spreading Flames, another Force Amplifier hitting the table here. I think I've definitely already come to the conclusion that force amplifiers are the name of the game, but what I will say is internally I had disrespected the Phoenix form deck a little bit, and perhaps I will no longer, as we see this deck absolutely beating the brakes off of Rhinar, just big turn after big turn after big turn.
Indeed. Sometimes just having access to a 0 for 5 with Go Again turns out to be pretty good. I think that's some good flesh and blood maths, last I heard. It does need you to play some synergy pieces, like those Become the Bottles, which maybe increases some of the risk of your deck not functioning the way that you want it to. But
I do think it's
with the
possible.
low lows come the high highs.
And those high highs are 3 Art of Wars on one turn, and another +1 effect to the whole turn on the next. Though we're yet to see it generate any value, interestingly. This is kind of the classic dichotomy of Spreading Flames. Sometimes it is a 1 for 8, and sometimes it is a 1 for 3. At
Well, in
least
this
getting
case,
the
we
buff
managed to
on
bump
this
up
Phoenix Flame.
to a 1 for 4 with our Phoenix Flame, thankfully. Going in for 2 with Go Again at this point. Shuko buff not yet used. Another kind of aspect of value generation we're hoping to deploy on this turn as Fi. Looks like we're going to be cracking the Dragon Scale of Fight Path, targeting the Emberblade. This is another trick that Fi picked up out of the Hunted. Getting access to swinging that Emberblade an additional time, a way to convert another blue on the hand. And this time, we are getting the buff on the Spreading Flames because this is our 4th Draconic Chain Link. In fact, I think it is our 5th Draconic Chain Link. And finally, a Phoenix form to close out. This one just getting the Go Again, only being a 0 for 4 with Go Again. Oh, unfortunately, we can't get everything we want with the full value on this card, but it is still enough to threaten lethal on this turn.
Unlike basically every turn prior, Jack is super duper not interested in blocking, and instead of folding the majority of his hand, he has gone to 1 and jammed all of his remaining points of armor except for that Savage Sash block to keep it. I suspect we're going to see a 5-card Blood Rush off the rip here.
Indeed, the absolute classic, old reliable brute card, Blood Rush Bellow, but this time not accompanied by the typical Mandible Claws, which let it go particularly wide. So Jack might be relying on seeing some Go Again pieces from his hand or his arsenal. He might be relying even on yet another cheeky Scabskins roll, which is certainly one of the higher risk ways to be using Scabskins, but I won't cast the judgment too soon. I'm sure he has a strong plan for this turn. The discard is a 6-power attack, a Savage Feast, which is going to allow Jack to intimidate a card, first of all, from Fi's hand, draw 2 additional cards with 2 resources floating, and we're just looking for how we can convert 20 damage out of these cards. No big deal. Easy.
Mandible Claw is quite good at that. The classic Mandible Claw Blood Rush kind of has a floor of 20 damage. You know, you usually get the claw for 5 into attack thing. But before we can get to 20 damage, we must first count in multiples of 2 plus 2 to the turn twice, and drawing 2 cards twice, and 2 Blood Rush Bellows played. You thought Brute's favorite number was 6? Today, it's dose.
Absolutely. I mean, in this case, Jack is saying, you know what, Andrew, you had your fun, you had your turn full of force amplifiers. It's time for my turn. And unlike your turn, where I got to block out through most of it, you are not going to get to block with a single card if Rhinar has his way. Already 2 cards intimidated out of the hand, which means we are seeing pretty limited ability for Fi to actually block this turn out. The Savage Sash is cracked, and we follow up immediately with one of those Go Again attacks, a Wild Ride, costing just 1 in this case.
Notably, we know
Here it
Jack's
comes.
deck is playing a pretty reasonable amount of whiffs, not only in the form of the usual suspects, the blue whiffs, but we also saw some clash cards in this hand. You could see this Blood Rush Bellow turn ending before it really gets started if he manages to peel something like a Test of Agility off the top and throw it straight into the bin.
It looks like in this case, we've managed to peel 1 card off the top, which is, of course, Alpha Instinct, one of the newest cards out of Rhinar's Armory deck, intimidating yet another card out of the hand, granting this Wild Ride, which, by the way, is coming in for 10 now with Go Again. It is looking like Jack might have found a way to pull back this game. It involves 2 Blood Rush Bellows in the same turn with a Savage Sash.
Kind of reminds me of the Berserk deck. You know, it's not necessarily playing Berserk as that card is banned, but there is a lot of cards being drawn, and the Berserk deck just maxed out on cards like Pulping, Wild Ride, etc., just to leverage those 6 discard effects. And the way this is built reminds me a bit of those decks, with a fair bit of draw discard happening. I think Wild Ride is largely a Rhinar staple, but the way this game has been played, seems like both decks were pretty oriented towards a single obscene pop-off turn. And
I
here
think
comes the
Andrew can see the
scabs
writing on the
roll.
wall here, saying, this last card, I've got to block with it if I want to have any hope of surviving. Jack looks at his hand and says, it's time to go for the jugular, and that means we are rolling the Scabskins. We are living the brute life. The brute life says
An
a
extra
2,
point. Not a
which at
1,
least
but
means we get to continue this turn.
oh my
But you
goodness
know
gracious.
what? I actually, I'm doing the math here. I see that coming in for 12,
Yeah,
but
Andrew's
12
gonna go
is
to 2, but
not
it's not quite lethal.
enough. Courtesy of that Shuko donating its last little bit of value of 2 block in this case, we see the life total down to single digits, 2 and 1. But Andrew's been left with 3 cards, which honestly, he didn't get any agency in choosing what those cards are. It's possible that that card which he was left with, which he had to block with to survive the turn, was his only starter. Time will tell, as he considers how he's going to go about playing his turn out with the 3 cards he's been left with.
Do you think what Jack really needs here is for Fi to brick? Because basically any 2-card Fi hand would take most of what he has left, and 3, I think, will take all of it, if not as well as his last point of life, especially since this Rhinar deck contains a fair few non-blocking cards.
Andrew thinking things over carefully, figuring out how can he at least take the most possible cards out of Jack's hand. And it starts with a 1 for 3 with Go Again. In this case, a Flame Call Awakening that has not had a red played before it. So we are not going to be searching for a Phoenix Flame, but we are still having a successful starter for this turn, which means we can follow up with a good old Emberblade for 3, demanding yet another card out of Jack's hand.
P3 blocks here. There was an Art of the Dragon War stuck in the hand, and is going to grab a Phoenix Flame, but our game is not over yet. Jack does get one more turn rather than dying to a 3-card Draconic Ninja hand. This is perhaps the downside a little bit of this Phoenix form build, is you don't have all the consistency that Fi usually does, that classic 2-card 7 floor that he's so capable of. But it also looks like Jack's going straight to rolling Scabskins here, so who could say?
Living that brute life, but down to the 2. We cannot
And
seem to swing the
passing!
Rugged Roller. Ooh,
Doesn't have a weapon!
those last 2 cards unable to convert. It looks like Jack's hand could not send that card from the arsenal. Perhaps he was stuck with a non-block in his hand, something like a Wild Ride or a Pulping, and just was not able to pitch the card in the arsenal.
Yeah, I guess if you can't play your arsenal, you don't really have any 1-card plays in this deck because of this Rugged Roller presented, which has been swung 0 times. And, much like Reaping Blade can occasionally do, I think the only thing this weapon has accomplished this game so far is killing Jack.
It looked pretty on the table. It
It
might have even
nice
given him a 6 if there was a Rockyard Rodeo. But I think we are going to see death by Phoenix Flame with this Reckless Stampede,
yup.
0 block red. No doubt the card that we kind of intellect penaltied through the last turn, and that means our game is over with Andrew squeaking it out, with both players absolutely just dominating on their gigantic turns. But in this case, Andrew has managed to squeak out the win with those, as you say, those last consistent little fire hands of just poke, poke, poke when you're at 1 that demands the entire hand, such that you just cannot get through in the end, leaving I think, is that a blue Assault and Battery in the arsenal at the end? A pretty tough one to be forced to arsenal. Whew. What a game. I mean, we certainly got to see both of these heroes display their sheer explosive potential, with Jack taking up on a pretty innovative build of Rhinar. I will say we maybe didn't get the payoff this time, and that we saw neither a Rugged Roller swing nor a Rockyard Rodeo pitched or discarded in this case. But I think it's a way to maybe increase the consistency on the deck, which is one thing that Rhinar has typically struggled with in the past.
Right,
What are we
just
thinking about these? Yeah, go on.
not to dig at you. I just have the question. You're saying rugged roller is higher consistency, potentially? The thing you have to roll a
Okay,
6 for.
okay, but if you're a brute, you're just gonna roll scabskins every turn, right? So it's just that consistency
Okay,
because
yeah.
you're gonna hit the 6
And if
eventually,
you're a
right?
brute,
Surely.
if you're a brute that's
Surely.
playing against me, you'll just always hit the 6, which makes life really easy with that weapon.
Sometimes we are lucky, sometimes we are not. That is the brute life that we live. But you're absolutely right. Where we give some things, we take some away. And in this case, I think Rhinar has chosen to give up a consistent weapon, which is perhaps one of the most powerful things you can have access to in Flesh and Blood, if I may make so bold a claim. To just have access to a few more of those 6s in the deck. I think we've got our players in for a quick interview about that game. Andrew and Jack, thank you for the game. Congratulations, Andrew, on scraping out that win in the end. Players, how did we feel about deck building for these heroes? Andrew, let's start with you. When you looked at Compendium of Rathe, what screamed out at you for 5? Because I don't think it was just the obvious cards.
So I think a couple heroes kind of got the lion's share of the love out of Compendium, and Fi was one of them. A lot of people say Art of the Phoenix War is the most powerful card out of the set, right? That said, for a long time now, I've been thinking like we just need 1 or 2 other Phoenix Flame cards, and we can start using some of these other things that have gone underappreciated in Fi for a while that kind of make him unique from Syndra in sort of the Draconic Ninja space. And the additional ways to discard Phoenix Flames for power was the start of that. But as you may have seen, Become the Bottle is a fun little ninja card that significantly ups the consistency of just getting Phoenix, the name Phoenix Flame, onto the combat chain. So I wanted to try playing around with that. And the only way to really push that to the limit was to try making Phoenix form work again.
So
I went into this expecting to show people why this doesn't work, and to be fair, the Phoenix form itself was a lava burst with Go again that game, which is fine, but it was not the blowout that it can be, but so rarely is.
I was going to say, you did end up answering my question there. My primary question for both players after this game was, so do you think this is the right way to be building this hero, or the funny way to be building this hero?
Jack, you want to start?
Any thoughts on that?
Yeah.
You certainly had a
Yeah,
fun
fine.
build of Rhinar. We will say that we were looking for where's the aggressive pounce? Where are the new cards? And it was only when the Rockyard Rodeo popped up that I went, I see what he's up to.
Well, actually, there's another. I would say not so powerful new card. That's what is it? Reckless arithmetic. Like when it attacks, roll a 6 side dice. So basically, I won't call this very competitive deck because actually the weapon is so difficult to swing because you can roll a 6 very reliably. But this is kind of a fun deck. Like I get the Bad Beats, the Rolling Thunder, even the Crazy Brew, if I can play that. Yeah. So I just trying to get the dice rolling.
That makes sense. Makes sense. It's
But,
it's really fun. The Rolling Thunder reminds me a lot of seeing that card played in Romping Club decks when people were playing Rolling Thunder with Romping Club.
Yeah. That's
Yes.
a much more reliable play, I would say, because that fits perfectly for a blue. And if I can do some very high value thing in theory if I rolled a 6 with a blue and a swing back or shoulder of strength, it will be 2 cards 14. Like
That is pretty
one for
good.
the roller, one for the roller and one for the swing back. For 2 action points. That's very. I think this deck is like having a very high ceiling and very low bottom. Yeah.
That makes
That's
sense.
kind
That makes
of
sense.
yeah, the risk and gain in maximum potential.
I do think Reckless
Absolutely.
Arithmetic is one of my favorite cards from the set. I do think it's really fun, which you obviously proved to everybody. The deck looked like a blast to play. The non-blocking Stampede at the end was a little bit of a tragedy.
Yep.
Yeah, I think some of my favorite things about seeing both of these decks is the way that they're leveraging cards which have a lot of power in the decks that we're seeing them. And obviously, we have this Become the Bottle play to try and enable Phoenix Form for 5, and we have Reckless Arithmetic to try and get some of the math going in Rhinar. But these are cards that have applications in other heroes in their classes as well. I think Become the Bottle is such an interesting card for Katsu for enabling some of the really powerful plays of being able to kind of force additional surging strikes on the turn or chain combos more efficiently. And Reckless Arithmetic, I don't know if we've met kind of the newest iteration of KO, but he loves those 1-power attacks. And a 1-power attack that buffs itself in the blues,
Yep.
that is a pretty cool RKO card.
I like that
So
card
thank
in
you very
RKO
much
a
for
lot.
sharing your thank you very much for sharing your builds with us, players. It was wonderful to see the game, some absolutely explosive flesh and blood gameplay to get us started, and we wish both your teams best of luck with the remainder of the match.
Thank you,
Thank
Shaman.
you.
Thank you all so much for
Alrighty,
playing.
folks. It looks like it's time for a change of pace. We've had our 40 life format, but remember that Silver Age is a very important part of the Compendium of Rathe season. You're going to have pro quests in both Silver Age and in Classic Constructed. So while the card guys take their 1-0 game in the game 1 of CC, we have some Silver Age now to try and see whether Blue Pitch can catch up or if the card guys will continue their lead. The matchup we have Azalea versus Zen. I've got to say, Zen is one that a lot of myself and my teammates had to look at when we were investigating Silver Age. But Ellie, thoughts on Zen and Silver Age? What do we do with this guy?
I think he kind of cooks. I'm actually quite fond of Zen and Silver Age. He's a hero I've also been looking at pretty fondly. I think you can just do some very unexciting but powerful stuff, kind of classic 20 life Zen stuff with things like Chi Unleashed. It's very much the limited special, but I think it's just pretty powerful. I also think that new Mystic Ninja Blue, which we will get to the Zen deck list, but I would imagine it's in the deck. That new Mystic Ninja Blue that lets you rename Crouching Tigers is also quite interesting. First, we got to talk about Will. I mean, absolute veteran of playing Azalea, played the hero the entire time she was in Classic Constructed. Big fan of playing her, and this deck list, makes a lot of sense to me. It's largely red arrows that cost 0 and 0 cost pumps. We're not going to see too much pitched outside of paying into Death Dealer. And we also see, I believe, Patch the Hole in the deck list. So this is a very kind of classic aggressive Silver Age Azalea deck, where what I imagine Will wants to be doing here is flipping into 1 arrow very quickly, drawing a bunch of free cards, and sending his opponent straight to God with a attack for 20 or so.
It makes a lot of sense to me. I mean, there's nothing like the horror of watching the Azalea player just go, give a little smirk, activate Azalea, and rip that arrow into the top and say, oh no, I can't dodge the barrage of on-hits that are going to be stacked up on this one gigantic arrow, be they Bloodrot Poxes, Frailties, Inertias, Go Again, courtesy of Boltyn Shot, and the new Boltyn Boots, which I think are one of the most powerful additions that Azalea saw coming out of Compendium of Rathe. So we're going to see some old reliable Azalea action back at it again. But let's have a look over David's list to see what exactly he has cooked up with Zen. And in this case, we see a couple of new Compendium of Rathe cards. You did note our blue card,
Shapeless
which
Form,
was indeed, and Fluid Motion, which is another one that kind of popped up out of the Enigma Precon deck that we noticed. We see one of the new kind of ninja, or shall I say, untalented ninja cards come up, Become the Cup in this case. A really interesting ninja attack for Zen in that it's a red, but it can also be a blue, which enables him to transcend while still sending a head jab for 3 instead of an attack for 1. A pretty powerful way to get just a little bit more value for this hand. And otherwise, it looks like we're seeing a lot of classic Tiger action. I can see the draft classics Untamed. I can see access to Flusterfist, which might be a fantastic finisher alongside the Shapeless form that you mentioned. Breed Anger, Flex Claws. I mean, these are just the cards that if you were playing Mistveil Limited, you are well familiar with the way that this Tiger deck can just poke you to death in the most irritating fashion. And I'm really looking forward to seeing how that plays out in the game. Is David going to get the chance to go wide and poke Azalea such that she is having to give up cards, or is Will Bradshaw going to assemble the most gigantic dominated arrow that we have ever seen? There's only one way to find out, folks. Let's make our way over to the game.
Yeah, you thought our previous game was explosive. This is two incredibly explosive heroes in a format with half the life. We're going to be flying by the seat of our pants here in the feature match area. Looks like pretty standard equipment from both heroes. That full Tiger suite is not only the equipment du jour in Zen, but also kind of the equipment du jour in basically every Silver Age ninja. That Mask of Many Faces to power the super powerful Life of the Party interaction by naming some kind of attack a Crazy Brew, more than likely a Crouching Tiger in Zen's case.
Absolutely, really well noted. That's one of the big combos to show up out of ninjas in this format. And beyond that, I mean, the Tiger Suite is just so powerful across all heroes, in that you get to access to send this 0 for to go again chain link off of your equipment, generate an extra resource for it. But in this case, you also get to get your Crouching Tiger synergies, which Zen is all about, which could be a really, really powerful thing for David to have access to. Looks like Azalea going
Will
first.
gets to go first, and perhaps
Absolutely.
do Azalea things. I'm actually, speaking of Compendium cards, we are not seeing those new anti-dominate boots, which are a really powerful tool against Azalea, which kind of helps mitigate some of the more toxic play patterns. But speaking of toxic play patterns, this is a turn
Azalea
0
life,
infecting shot flipped in from the top of the deck. With Dominate, likely going to see some buffs on this, but even if not, 6 Dominate with a meaningful on-hit is not how you want to start on the other side of the table, and now it is 9 2 on-hits, and I'm not really sure that David's going to have the gear or cards to cover this up, so likely going to start the game at a pretty significant deficit.
I've got to say, this is a pretty brutal place to start. This is a thing that you never really want to be seeing if you get to play against Azalea. There is the opportunity to cover this up. We could see access to Reinforce the Line, which is a 2-of in David's deck list, and is the lifesaver card in the situation where you kind of get a chance to play around Dominate a little bit. But as you mentioned, we did not see those anti-dominate boots and other really powerful kind of generic equipment to come out of the set. In this case, it looks like David does not have the Reinforce, will be taking 5 damage, and that means we are also taking a Blood Rot Pox and a Frailty to start off this game. I mean, I don't know if some of our viewers missed what Azalea does, but this is pretty typical, folks. You get to see the good old turn 0. Oops, you cannot negotiate with all this damage and these on hits that I am sending at you. So Zen has got the odds stacked against him for this one. Let's see if David can navigate the turn to push some early damage and make up for that first arrow hitting.
This is kind of the classic Azalea bread and butter. Kind of something that I do quite like about Silver Age. While it is powered down like budget formats of yore, like Commoner, the thing it is mostly replacing, it is still full power in the sense that I really feel like in Commoner, decks felt pretty stripped down, largely just playing for numbers. But in Silver Age, I do feel like you actually get a really solid idea of what the heroes want to be doing. And I think that this is a really good example of that, in the sense that, like, this is what you didn't want to see Azalea do to you in Classic Constructed, going second against her, as opposed to Commoner, where you would never go second against Azalea because the deck largely didn't exist without access to rares like Lace with Frailty. So, for better or for worse, it's nice to see decks doing the thing that the hero is designed to do in this format, which definitely gives me a lot of optimism about Silver Age, you know?
Absolutely. I mean, so many of us play Flesh and Blood and the heroes that we choose to play within the game because we feel a real affinity for their play patterns or their identity. And having the chance to actually see those expressed in the game, I agree, is a really important thing for us to see. So getting the chance to do that classic Azalea play pattern, you know what? If you really vibed with Azalea when she was in Classic Constructed, if you never got the chance to play her and you think, you know what, that might be for me, getting the chance to do so in this format is a really, really big deal. Then opens up the turn with a classic combo card, 100 wins, followed up by an unfortunate swing of the Tiger Taming Kakara, a little bit meek, thanks to this frailty token, meaning it is just coming in for 1. Following up with a swing of the Crouching Tiger, this one coming in for just 1, thanks to the buff from Tiger Taming Kakara. And this is something actually that Zen has access to quite uniquely over other heroes, where a lot of other ninjas, you'll see them cashing in that equipment all at once because they're not really capable of creating tigers outside of the equipment suite. Zen can
Yeah, it's
choose to
very
kind of
all or
leave things
nothing.
out a little bit. Yeah, Zen can choose to go, you know what, I'm just going to use the boots here because I'm going to get access to making a tiger later. I can use the gloves and the chest then. But for now, I think I only need the boots. And it looks like we are seeing that Mask of Many Faces activated, naming, well, I suppose it could be naming anything. But I
I
get the feeling that you
suspect
are
it'll
on the
be
right
naming
track, Ellie,
Crazy Brew.
that we are naming a Crazy Brew. But we'll find out with the follow-up chain link. For now, it's a Pouncing Chi that is additionally named something else, quite possibly Crazy Brew, coming in for 4 with Go Again because its combo is enabled from the Crouching Tiger that preceded it.
It is novel that they gain the name, so you can name a Crouching Tiger something, and then, you can name a Crouching Tiger something and then play a Tiger combo card. It will be both a Crouching Tiger and whatever you named it. Kind of a fun thing about
Indeed.
gaming properties.
Gives us access to just a little bit more kind of flexibility in the play patterns and in the combos. Think in this case, Will sees the writing on the wall, figures, okay, there is going to be a big functionally 0 for 6 attack with Go Again on hit, gain 2 life coming up after this. How do I need to respond to that when thinking about how I might block this pouncing chi? In this case, I
Is
think
looking at
pondering
some
giving up the
armor
Boltyn
here.
boots.
Nope, just snap it off,
In this
taking 4
case,
down to 11 to David's 15. And it is the life of the
and there
party,
she is,
destroying that attack.
the life of the party. I remember asking Josh Scott about this interaction while at Pro Tour Baltimore in 2023. To think that we are seeing it show up in Silver Age so many years later warms my heart a little bit, to be honest. We see 2 arrows committed to the block. Will recognizing that, you know what, I think that on hit gain 2 life is a little bit too much value for me to be offering you, so I will give up the 2 cards here, which maybe is a bit of a victory in David's book. He's quite happy to see that the tempo has turned around a little bit with Azalea down to 3 cards and
Oh my gosh, the
forced
back
to
of
send
those
this turn.
cards. It's the draft
It could be
classic.
anything, Ellie.
They
It
could
could
be
be anything.
anything. It's the draft classic. It's you remember drafting part the misfail and in organized play circuits and just having to look away from the pack before you were told to pick it
Oh
up because
yeah,
you would
dude.
occasionally see cheat cards in it.
I remember looking up at the ceiling as I was drafting and just kind of like mind palacing my way through what cards I was drafting because I did not want to catch the wrong side of any of those transcend cards. Oh,
Mind palacing their way through their deck right now is Will, who has used Blossom Spring to load an arrow off Death Dealer and draw a card. We've already seen 2 0-cost pumps. This is looking like a 2-card 10 coming in here with a meaningful on hit. David would essentially be going to 3 if he chose not to block this, and I can't imagine he has much blocking to do with 2 Transcend Instants stuck in the hand. Boltyn boots
we do have the 2
ended
equipment
up
which could be
not
cashed
being
in
blocked
here.
with.
Indeed. So Will perhaps suggesting that he's quite comfortable to just arsenal this card that he's left with in hand. David having the option maybe to block with these 2 pieces of equipment, possibly even block with some of the cards in his hand. But as you say, we do have a bit of a tip-off from from courtesy of Tabletop Simulator that there are 2 Transcend cards in the hand, and Transcend cards do not block, given that they are instants. So we are expecting maybe David to take quite an aggressive line here. We could just be seeing a flat no blocks, and taking the 10
I think
damage
he
down free.
probably
We
needs
could be seeing.
to shove the equipment, basically no questions asked, because this is drill shot.
Oh,
Very
absolutely. We
use
do
it
have an
or
on-hit to
lose it
consider right here. That's
situation.
a very important point. We don't want to kind of lose the additional value of getting a -1 counter placed on those equipment before they've had the chance to block. So we do indeed see them thrown down immediately. But do we see any cards from hand is the question. It looks like no. We are just opting to take the 8 damage remaining from that arrow, leaving us at 5 life. 4 cards in hand, 2 equipment, and a dream, says Zen.
If there's
Let's see
any
what this
hero
translates to.
that can win the game on this turn, I do trust it to be the Tamer of Purpose. But it does feel like David needs to at least make a push to win the game on this turn with this double chi kind of hand.
Absolutely. We
If
need
you're
to be
looking
finding a
at
way
a
to
Chi
threaten lethal
Unleashed,
somehow.
yeah, if you're looking at a Chi Unleashed that's already 7 damage on offer, you've got 2 in the glove slot available to you, as well as some resources on the board to be cashed in. You're probably hoping to at least make Azalea block a little bit, because you were in that kind of danger zone kill range at the moment. Should Will be able to find a dominated arrow off the top. And he still has access to Bullseyes and Boltyn boots. He's quite ahead if we're just considering what's on the board right now.
Absolutely. David, no doubt considering how to start this turn. One thing to always kind of consider when you are playing these Mystic Heroes is that while the Transcends do work well with each other, sometimes they require some additional kind of setup in that some of them require an open combat chain, some of them require, well, that's, I guess, the main condition. Some of them certainly do require an open combat chain. So we get access to a blue starter here, that shapeless form that you pointed out, which in this case is going to give our Crouching Tigers, all of our ephemeral cards, which are just Crouching Tigers in this case, access to an additional name, maybe getting to enable some true combo shenanigans a la Katsu, but courtesy of these Tigers.
1 damage is the ask. Maybe Will, considering if he wants to give up those Boltyn boots here or later. Not that Zen has so many on-hits to speak of. Pass over a little bit. One of the best Transcend cards, kind of overall, a little bit defanged in Silver Age, where there's just not very much graveyard interaction outside of Gravy Bones, where it is an absolute titan.
It's a pretty good all-star against Fi as well, I'll tell you that. You know what? Fi doesn't love getting his Phoenix Flame banished from the graveyard. In this case, we are probably going to see, indeed, we see just a pump, a Scout the Periphery banished from the graveyard, but critically transcending to end up with that inner chi in the hand, giving us access to Zen's incredibly powerful hero ability. If anyone has not had the chance to play with Zen, I hear tutoring cards, in other words, looking for specific cards from your deck to suit the specific situation you're in. It's kind of good. And I think that might be what we're doing this turn.
Sometimes. Every single Chi in the deck is essentially whatever the best card you need it to be in that moment is. Looks like that
Indeed,
is
we
a
are
Zen
seeing,
activation to follow.
which will not only allow us to search for a card with combo and banish it to be able to play it this turn, but we also see the creation of one of those Crouching Tigers in the hand, which additionally can gain just about any name at this point, thanks to the shapeless form on the combat chain.
And that Tearing Shuko still on the board unused, so we can cash that in for 2 value here. I'm not sure.
Oh, it looks like
Buster Fist is a good one. I was gonna say, I'm not
Yeah.
sure he has so much incentive to name anything other than Crouching Tiger, but Flusterfist is definitely the one card you want to see. Have you seen
Now,
Flusterfist played?
this is a little
Oh, he
bit
must have Pathwell
suspicious.
Traveled in hand.
That's exactly it. I do think that gives us a pretty strong impression of what the remaining Transcend card is in the hand, which is no doubt going to be a path well traveled to give this go again. Turning this simple Flusterfist, this humble Flusterfist, into a 0 for 4 with go again. Which begs the question, what is left in the hand? We know one of those cards is a Tiger, and one of those cards that has just been transcended and ended up back in the hand is an Inner Chi. Followed with a Tiger Taming Kakara coming in for 2 with go again.
Zen has already been used. Curious what is in the hand. Perhaps he has just drawn the Chi Unleashed. Or we just have a different combo card altogether. Ooh, to be a fly on the wall and know what this card is named.
Absolutely. Tearing Shuko being committed here to make this Tiger come in for 3, getting the additional +1 from the Tiger Taming Kakara. This is that nickel and dime ninja action at it once again. Just poke, poke, poke until eventually you are having to throw your hand down to prevent just 1 point of lethal damage. But in this case, Will is still at a healthy 5. He might find the way to survive this turn without having to commit more cards to the combat chain.
It looks like the Tiger is named Open the Center. So we see 3 hits on the combat chain already. So if he has a red Flusterfist in the hand, that's already attacking for 7. 2 more than Will's current life total. If he blocks for 3 right now, it's essentially blocking 4. But he's still going to have to give at least 1 more card to the next attack. So David has kind of succeeded mission critical here, which is get some cards from the Azalea player before she nukes you from orbit. The question is whether taking at least 2 cards is quite good enough, or if Will's just going to be able to find it off the top thanks to Death Dealer and Patch the Hole.
Indeed. Considering carefully, it looks like Will is saying, you know what? I don't think you've got it, my friend. I think this is a bluff. And in this case, we see you called the shot, Ellie. You had it exactly right. We are coming in with the Chi Unleashed to end the turn, coming in for a whopping 7 damage while at just 2 life. That means Will is going to have to give at least 6 points of block on here. We are giving it in the form of 3 cards, which is absolutely brutal for Azalea to be losing at this time.
That is exactly what you want to see here as the Zen player. Getting 3 cards from your Azalea opponent. Thankfully, Will's still in the game here. Going to get to use Patch the Hole to take a card out of his arsenal and put it in his hand. Looks like in this case, it's going to be to use the Bullseye Bracers effect and just get a nice big attack here. This is massive. I believe a 2-card 9 with a meaningful on-hit.
Patch the Hole was one of those equipments which certainly when I was looking at it in the context of High Seas Limited, it was like, I didn't fully understand why they just printed what felt like a strictly worse owning hood. And then you start to understand when you look at the arrows that you have access to in the set, just why they wanted to let you bounce something back to your hand just so that you can load it face up. This dry powder shot, had it been sent from the arsenal as is, would have lacked its own critical +2 ability. But in this case, it is being sent in for a whopping 9 damage, courtesy of Bullseye Bracers, with additional on it of a Blood Rot Pox. But
double Waxon coming into block 10 on just 2 cards, fully stuffing that and leaving David with 2 whole cards to work with. And Will's only
Will looked at a 2-card 9 and said, yeah, that's cool. Here's a 2-card 10. Anyway, give me cards because it is ninja time. We are seeing this 100 wins coming in for 3 with go again, demanding an immediate 3 block from Will Bradshaw, and following up with just a 0 for 3 in this case from the Pouncing Chi. We do not see combo enabled. This might only demand a single extra card from Will if he's found another arrow, but the question then is he going to have any damage to return if he's giving up a second arrow from his hand? Or is it even worse than that we're having to give multiple 2 blocks and end this turn with but a single card in hand? If it's an arrow, it can't be sent from the hand. It can't be loaded with a Death Dealer, which means David gets to walk into this turn with 4 whole cards to work with. Will at just a single point of life. It's looking like dire straits for Will Bradshaw at this point.
Become the Cup, likely naming blue to pair with that Transcend card in David's hand, so unsubtly seen. That is a really interesting thing about this card, I do really like that it is essentially a red-blue for Zen. Very cool stuff.
And I wonder if it might have some applications elsewhere in the format. There are a few cards that care about particular colors. One that springs to mind for me is good old-fashioned prismatic ley line. Could that be finding a home
Yeah.
in some Ninja Jacks, or am I overcooked?
No, it seems pretty reasonable to play like red-blue or blue-yellow on Become the Cup. It will eat both buffs since it is your next blue and yellow attack, which is pretty entertaining. Zen search here with 2 floating. I can only imagine what this is going to be. I suspect it'll be a tiger for. Oh no, it is just a Fluster Fist. I really thought that this was going to be the Chi Unleashed, but I suppose 2 into 1 into 4 is a better way to close the game. And I suspect the virtual fist bump has been extended. Will -4 if Compendium of Rathe has anything to say to the folks at home. It is apparently that Ninja is back, baby.
Ninja is so back. You know, you described it really well when we were talking about the kind of the power of Zen earlier. This death by 1,000 cuts thing that Ninja gets access to is so powerful in a format where the armor is certainly powerful, but maybe not 2-block temper like we're used to seeing in Classic Constructed. You know, you have to work a little bit harder to get access to that level of blocking. And Azalea, certainly Rangers in general, do not have access to that amount of block on their equipment. So these 2s, 1s, 3s over and over again. I mean, after a dominating start by Will Bradshaw, David shows just how a little bit of composure, a little bit of careful thinking can take you through to a victory from behind.
Yeah, I was very much under the impression, Azalea got to do more or less exactly what it is she wants to do. Going first, David had to start the game both 5 life down and with a blood rot on the board. It's like just far from where you want to be, but Zen got to do Zen things, which was be really explosive and go get whatever combo card is best in the situation. And that turn, I think, really played to Zen's strengths, where David got to just go find a combo card and say, okay, look, I'm going to find the way to take as many cards from you here as absolutely humanly possible.
Absolutely. We have our players in the booth. Thank you very much, David and Will, for an excellent game. That was a real nail biter, I've got to say. Will, you had the dream start for Azalea, and we know that you're an Azalea veteran. How did it feel to be wielding Death Dealer once again and flip that arrow off the top and say, "Oh, we're so back"?
Well, it was super fun. Me and David were actually laughing about it because I don't like talismanic lens. I want a hat that can do more things in a pinch. So when I went for that blind Azalea and it hit, I was just like, "It's an arrow!" And me and David were just laughing in the booth. It was really fun.
And speaking of that hat, we got to see Patch the Hole really demonstrate its power in that kind of last turn cycle where you were able to send an arrow. I mean, from just 2 cards, being able to suddenly send 9 damage by sending a dry powder shot back into your hand, only to load it again for free with the bullseye bracers and put a pump on top of it. I've got to say, that was a really impressive demonstration of the power of that equipment. Meanwhile, David...
Absolutely.
Poke. The ninja way was on display here. What drew you to Zen when it came for thinking about Silver Age?
Oh, David might have stepped away for a second.
Perhaps
we might have
we'll never
lost David for a
know.
second. We may...
sorry.
There we go.
Never know.
Sorry. I just used the idea from many others, like using the Mask of Many Faces and like with the life of the party combo, and like it actually like creates a lot of interesting moments. Like I bluffed Will for like having another Fluster Feast. And I was like open center, yeah, and like it's actually like, quite cool. You get to use a lot of Tigers related combo cards that not many other ninjas can do, and like it's quite fun. The new cards are fun. Every other stuff's are fun. Yeah.
Zen is also one of my favorite decks in Silver Age. He's really one I've been looking at for the ProQuest season coming up.
Well, you certainly put the power on display there. Yeah, he wasn't one that was on my radar, to be honest with you, but maybe we'll be giving him another look after watching that last game. That was a pretty impressive showing, I have to say. Thank you very much, players, and congratulations on David for evening it out for Team Blue Pitch. That means the record is now 1-1 between our two teams, which means it is all to play for as we carry on and look at our next game of Classic Constructed featuring Ellie. It's Boltyn time. Tell me about Boltyn.
It is Boltyn time, and more than that, so last show match we had a bit of a technical kerfuffle where Josh kind of had to host streaming the game off of his computer, which meant that he was not in a position to play the show match game, and he had me step in to play his Boltyn deck. So this time he's playing my Boltyn deck as a little bit of continuity for the folks at home. I think Boltyn seems like perhaps the singular biggest winner. You know, if there was a most improved award for Compendium of Rathe, I do suspect it might be the Breaker of Dawn. People are and will continue to sleep on him, but I promise you, this hero is really impressive now. This deck, I think, feels somewhat stock. You're playing a lot of the really powerful new stuff, Duty Bound Blitz, and a lot of the classic staples. Just the good stuff, Charger cards, and then the exciting new stuff: Blessing of Boltyn, Duty Bound Blitz, and Roaring Beam, a card that I was kind of down on and ended up being really high on after playing a few games with it.
Absolutely. Having the chance to test a little bit of Boltyn myself. I mean, there are some cards that you look at and your jaw just hits the floor, right? I mean, Duty Bound Blitz is a potential 0/4/5 with Go Again before you even consider applying Boltyn's ability that can give that attack an additional +1 if it's blocked by an attack action card. But then there are these more subtle cards. As you mentioned, kind of Roaring Beam and attack reaction, which on the surface, like, okay, I can spend a whole card to make a courage. Seems not great, but the real power of it is that it allows you to be so much more kind of aggressive with your soul usage because you have access to this attack react that lets you just go boop, and we're back. You have a guaranteed starter for next turn because you have a courage to pump your next attack, and on top of that, you have a free soul at a point when you otherwise would have been soul 0.
That's also a very powerful starter when you are low on soul resources, since you can just attack with Raiden and play out the Roaring Beam to pump the Raiden by having charged in the reaction step. So it is essentially a charge starter with Go Again alongside Raiden. Just a really, really, really sweet card.
Absolutely. And then you mentioned, of course, your own preview card from the last Compendium season, Blessing of Boltyn. I mean, folks, if you haven't seen this card, what a crazy setup aura. I think telling you about a line that she played at an armory the other day where thanks to Blessing of Boltyn creating a bunch of courages on your turn 0 and several charges, you ended up sending, I think, a bolt of courage for 11 on the following turn.
Yeah. The possible high rolls turn 0 with Blessing of Boltyn are really crazy. The exact turn was Blessing, swing Raiden, play Roaring Beam, charge Spirit, which doesn't go to Soul but does go to Soul, so it makes a courage, and then makes a courage from Roaring Beam, and then you play the Roaring Beam again, and you have 4 courages on the board, a card in Soul and Spirit, and then it gets out of hand really fast. But that's enough about Boltyn. I think we should take a look at Levia, the deck on the other side of the table, and kind of the other side of the faction war. Both of these heroes from the same set. Both of these heroes getting a fair bit of love from this set, too. Boltyn got a lot of love, but Levia also got that powerful new defense reaction, Engulfing Shadows, a yellow 0/4 defense reaction that I believe banishes itself when played, or after it has been played, which is potentially a downside, as it does have blood debt, but is very capable of being quite powerful in the late game after you flip, and you get 3 more 4-block cards to block with.
Absolutely. It's really leaning into, I think, one of my favorite things about Levia, which is this kind of like risk-reward factor almost of like you stock up your blood debt with all of these cards. So if you miss on being able to switch off blood debt before you're ready to do so, it can be absolutely disastrous. But the power that you get access to when you hit 13 life due to a blood debt trigger and choose to flip over into Blasmafet, Levia Consumed, and all of a sudden you have access not only to a suite of offensive cards with blood debt, the likes of your Dread Screamers and Shadow Realm Horrors, but even defensive cards, things like there'll be Engulfing Shadows, and even Guardian of the Shadow Realm, which is not in this deck list because, honestly, do we even need to be playing Guardian of the Shadow Realm anymore when we have access to something like Engulfing Shadows? It is so cool to be seeing our classic light versus shadow matchup coming up in this show match, and I hope that we get to see a little bit more of it in some future sets. I don't know about you, Ellie, but I get the feeling we might be heading back to the Demonastery and Solana in the very near future. But we can save the speculation for another time because our players are ready to go. So let's see what this classic tale of light versus shadow has in store for us.
I wonder who is going first here. First is a really interesting thing in this matchup because Boltyn really likes going first, getting a little bit of soul, getting a little bit of setup going. But Levia really likes going second and being attacked on that turn 0 so she can get some cards into the bin. Definitely curious to see who's starting and how things shake out here. And the Tunic counter tells me it is Josh leading off. I wonder if we can find a Roaring Beam or a Blessing to start the game off.
Opting in this case for the Tunic rather than, I noticed in the deck list that Josh is playing, your deck list, that you've opted for the ability to play Old Knocker as well for some of the really fast aggressive matchups. So maybe recognizing that actually we might be grinding a little bit longer in this game. I want to have access to maybe 2 resources generated off of Tunic. In this case, we see that classic starter that you mentioned, the Roaring Beam to get us going. Getting bounced
Charging a Banneret is a great place to be, a Courage and a Quicken. But the tricky thing about the wording of Roaring Beam is that the card goes back to your hand and then you charge whatever you want. So I suspect Josh is going to get to make a whole bunch of Courages here, as well as put a card in his arsenal by using Boltyn to empty his soul back out.
Indeed, using Boltyn's ability here to give that Raiden Dustbane go again, and immediately playing the Roaring Beam a second time, trying to charge yet again, in this case, charging an Engulfing Light. And once again, activating what we're just saying, I am going to use Roaring Beam to stack up as much soul, well, not as much soul, we're still only at 1 soul at the end, but 3 Courages at the end of the day. What an amazing interaction, courtesy of this little workhorse rare that we've gotten out of Compendium of Rathe.
Roaring Beam, it kind of fits into a category alongside Engulfing Shadows, Fire That Burns Within, and Flame the Firebrand, a few things that I kind of feel like are blue Majestics, you know? They say rare, but they feel like a card that could, would, or should be a Majestic.
Yeah, I mean, I looked at the Vin set, the Shadow Runeblade Runegate card, Deep Recesses of Existence, and was like, you chose to make this a rare? You could have made this a Majestic and I would have been happy.
We need some juice for Silver Age.
Yeah, we really do have some. So Levia starting out with a little bit of that graveyard fill, like you mentioned. And it looks like I might have missed. Do we have a Scabskins roll taking us to 2 action points to kick off with this Deadwood Rumbler?
That must have been the case here. Drawing and discarding a 6, going to get to banish anything from the graveyard, choosing to take a whiff out, which makes a lot of sense. An attack for 6 is the offer. Curious to see if Josh has any interest in blocking whatsoever, if we're going to snap off this big old pile of power sitting on the board in the form of a Quicken and 3 Courages. He is going to give up a 3 block. Likely taking 3 down to 37.
Get to see the Gauntlets activated, pitching away that legendary specialization of Doomsday. We might not get to see a Doomsday.
Oh my god,
but immediately a new card coming, and I've got to say, it's a new card I was not expecting to see in this matchup, to be honest with you. Boltyn seems like it's really most applicable for things like the Warrior matchup, the Arachne Marionette matchup, but in this case, we rip a whole card out of Levia's hand, courtesy of that Boltyn, alongside blocking for 2. That was quite the blowout.
I think Boltyn is a really very strong card in the context of really very strong card in the context of the Brute matchup because they're so reliant on swinging Mandible Claw. You just get to block 2 and force a card out of hand.
And who says that Warrior never gets good cards? I mean, they often don't get good cards, but this time they got a good card.
They usually don't get good cards, but this time they got like a really good card. I do think Boltyn is interesting in that I think it's mostly a pretty reasonable card for Warrior, But as far as an aggro deck like Boltyn is concerned, I think it's a bit of a dangerous tool to give him. I'm a little curious to see how things shake out on that front, but it is very powerful to give an aggro deck defensive disruption.
I think one of my favorite things about Boltyn is kind of the fact that they chose to make it a yellow in many ways is kind of makes it an easier pill to swallow for both Boltyn and for Kasai, heroes who really value finding access to yellows in their pitch curve as cards that they can actually use for resources on their turn, but also for other reasons. Kasai likes having yellows in the graveyard so she can activate her hero power. Boltyn likes having yellow cards that he can charge to soul if he gets the ability to keep that Boltyn without getting to convert it for the discard value.
I definitely agree.
Josh?
I think being yellow is pretty massive upside. It can be occasionally difficult that the card only blocks 2. But speaking of blocking 2, Josh shoving all 6 of his armor in the form of 3/2 blocks to keep this hand. I suspect we are seeing V of the Vanguard hit the table. This is a bit of a scary play in this matchup with Scowling Flesh Bags still on the board, but you gotta rip it somewhere somehow. You can't live in fear forever.
Yeah, the moment we saw those Warpaths blocked, and you called it right away. The moment we saw the Warpath blocked without charging the soul, I was like, this has got to be a big turn coming up. Lo and behold, it is a V of the Vanguard turn. But, as you mentioned, Levia has a little bit of way to stymie the power on this turn, choosing to use the Scowling Fleshbag immediately for this first big power turn, and the opportunity to fill the graveyard just a little bit more so that when she starts banishing 6s from the graveyard,
here comes Celestial Cataclysm at home. Duty Bound Blitz coming in for 7 with Go again. This card kind of is both powerful in the form of being obviously a 0 for 5, but the fact that it natively has Go again is so... I mean, it's obviously powerful, but it is subtly powerful in the sense that it preserves a lot of soul here. And even though Josh got a card taken out of his hand, this is still a 4-card play attacking for 5/7/5. This is a 4-card 17 that, because of Duty Bound Blitz natively having Go again, goes up on soul.
I think this is just the sheer power of that card. As you mentioned, the innate Go again is so powerful, and we've already kind of noted cards like Roaring Beam. All of this adds up in a way that Boltyn is allowed to use his soul so much more aggressively, and in a situation like this, be able to build it back up again, which is just obscenely powerful. But Levia's got some new cards to play as well. Here comes that first copy of Engulfing Shadows, blocking for 4, and starting Levia's Blood Debt clock, which means I think it's going to be time to start banishing some 6s to keep that blood debt from ticking her life total down and unleash the beast, as it were.
That is very much the thing that I think is so powerful and impressive about the Compendium Boltyn cards, which is you really start to eliminate the ramp-up time, which I think was really Boltyn's biggest weakness.
Absolutely. Levia showing she doesn't need that long to ramp up either, sending out a 2-card 9 here nice and efficiently with a card left over to Arsenal. Boltyn with a pretty considerable life lead, though, and up on so much soul, it's entirely possible that Josh looks at this 9 and says, yeah, no worries, I'll go to 26.
Definitely seems possible. I imagine the question is only whether or not he can convert the whole hand. And given he's lining up 2 cards to block, I don't suspect he can.
Indeed, one of the dangers of our favorite Runeblade, who's not a Runeblade, Boltyn, is that sometimes you're going to look at a hand that you can't convert quite so well and go, you know what, it's time to do a bit of blocking. The good news is that the vast majority of those cards block 3, but not the Boltyn in this case that does not get its value and just looks a little bit meager as a 2-block there. So maybe an opportunity for Nova to start catching up in this game a little bit.
Bolt Courage charging a Banneret of Gallantry. Curious if he has the attack reaction here, or if this is simply just praying. And yeah, it looks like he got a little bit owned by the Scowling Flesh Bag, forced into a starterless hand. That is the danger of playing Warpath sometimes, that the 2-block is really nice, but when you don't have snaps, you can end up in some pretty awkward positions.
Absolutely.
Scabs
Over here
roll
with
scary.
basically full tempo, but opting for a Scabskins.
No!
Oh my goodness.
The
This
second
is not
one
what
tonight.
Levia needs to be seeing in this position. 4 cards to work with, all the tempo in the world, 2 Blood Debt not yet enabled, and we roll a 1 on Scabskins. That's the brute life, folks. I don't know what else to say. This is the brute life. Josh immediately capitalizing on the space that he's been given with a beaming bravado coming in for 4 with go again, courtesy of the quicken that he made last turn. Nova thinking, how am I going to get back in this game from this position? How much am I going to need to block? How much go again do I need to find access to? Or do I just need to say, you know what? We are taking the damage here. With Boltyn, with Josh,
pretty much.
possibly. Oh, of course, we had the go again from the quicken, so we did not need to activate Boltyn's ability there. We will send the Raiden for 3, which will no doubt be given go again from Boltyn's ability to send this turn even wider. In this case, Nova's now saying, okay, it's time for me to maybe start blocking a little bit.
He is going to get some extra aggressive value thanks to his hero ability, leaking 1 over the 3 block. And yeah, another duty-bound blitz here. You now know what was intimidated. The Scowling Fleshbag essentially didn't matter. They were both red duty-bound blitzes on that via the Vanguard turn. Nova kind of hanging on for dear life to this 14-13 life threshold he's at. Maybe being forced to give up this Carrion Husk quite before he's ready. This is not a great position to be in as Levia.
I think there is a really interesting line here whereby rather than choosing to give up the husk, you actually choose to give up a card and your last block on Scabskin Leathers, saying, you know what? I'm going to go to 13 life on Blood Debt and get to flip over into Consumed. Not a great place to be, mind you, ending up in Consumed with just 2 cards with Blood Debt playable, but it might be the position that we're for. Oh, make that 3, courtesy of the second copy of Engulfing Shadows, which is a pretty huge find here, I have to say, and saying, you know what, I'm going to end up at 13 life, and I'm just going to trust that I can afford to use this Carrion Husk defensively after I have flipped, and that looks like exactly the line that Nova is going for, deliberately sending out a Swing Big here, a card that will not disable his Blood Debt for the turn, to get ticked down to 13 life and transform into the beast that is Plasma Fett Levia Consumed.
Damage, Boltyn at 31. Tough to imagine Josh wants to do much blocking unless his hand just doesn't convert. No flush bag to worry about.
Even with this flip play, though. Even with this flip play, I mean, look at the life differences right now. Josh Lau is currently 17 life ahead of Nova Chan on Levia. I mean, it is going to be a real uphill battle. Those Engulfing Shadows in the Banner Zone are going to have to do a lot of work to pull Nova back into this game.
If any card could do it, 2 free 0 for 4 defense reactions. I mean, he essentially gains 8 life when he flips.
True, it's true. Effectively kind of putting him at 21 in a way.
What? Sure. It's like blocking 6, taking 2 on the swing big. Again, Josh maybe not drawing the smoothest hands that Boltyn could possibly find in this game, or just preferring to keep his life total high for the eventual Blood Rush Fellows play that will come his way.
I do wonder if this is a situation where Josh looks at the Carrion Husk still on the board and says, you know what? If I try to assemble a big turn into that 6 free life sitting on the board, what's the point of it? Why don't I instead take a little bit more setup, just try and evacuate this kind of arsenal card here, create a courage token, and Nova immediately recognizes, you know what? It's use it or lose it time. I have to smash a Carrion Husk in front of this and just say, you know what? 3 life is good enough. Because we still have those Engulfing Shadows waiting in the Banish Zone, ready to be deployed on one of Josh's future turns.
Josh's draws have definitely been pretty far from optimal. 2 turns without a starter this game. East within pitched to play a Dread Screamer. 6 go again, kind of the staple Shadow Brute card here, really.
Yeah, we're finally getting to see the real kind of Shadow Brute card pool at play, which is this relentless go again that Brute normally has to work so hard for, rely on just a little bit of variance to ensure they can actually get the go again. And rest assured, Levia has some of that variance as well, but with a graveyard so stocked full of 6 power attacks, you know that Dread Screamer is almost assuredly coming in for 6 with go again, and it is in this case.
Yeah, this is perhaps why Josh has opted so much, both with the lack of starters and just how much damage Levia can put out once she is flipped. This is perhaps why Josh has opted to keep his life total so high. He immediately snapped off no blocks there, going down to 23, still 10 life ahead, but 2-0 before defense reactions, chilling. And Nova's banished zone make it a little bit harder for Josh to slam the door than he'd like.
In this case, following up the Dread Screamer with
actually,
just an old 1 for 6.
Actually, really interestingly here, Nova only has 5 cards in his graveyard after that turn. He doesn't have as much gas to work with in terms of banishing things to pay cost as he would like. A little bit too much pressure put down by this Boltyn deck.
Might not be capable of quite that wide turn that we're after. And yes, indeed, the courage in this case being absolutely critical for ensuring that we can activate Boltyn's attack reaction on this ability and start going wider. Send a raid in after this and hopefully convert even more on the hand to send more and more damage. In this case, a red
engulfing shadows.
Indeed, I would expect it. In this case, we're charging a red Express Lightning, so we're probably, well, at this point, currently unlikely to see any of those duty-bound blitzes hit the combat chain, but there's still plenty of other cards which could be threatening in this position.
Like Illumina Ascension, of which Josh has seen 0 so far.
Indeed, that critical Boltyn kind of pseudo specialization. I'm actually not sure if it is a Boltyn specialization. I think it is actually.
Illumina Ascension is a Boltyn specialization. It was in the era where they no duty bound blitz, but this is the card that kind of predates it. Very similar. 0 for 7 with go again at the cost of 3 soul. No Husk left and a D-React from Banish already played. This is a huge chunk of Nova's remaining life total and is asking quite a lot when Josh still has 2 cards to work with.
Once again, blocking with an attack action, the one thing that you really don't want to be doing against Boltyn if you can help it. This Dread Screamer is functionally converting for 2 actual points of value, and just as you mentioned, Ellie, here is that specialization, that absolute signature card of Lumina Ascension here to save the day for Boltyn, coming in for 4 damage, but not just 4 damage, threatening soul from the top of the deck and life gained if it gets the chance to hit. This is a particularly brutal follow-up from Josh, and it looks like Nova is recognizing, you know what, I cannot contest this yet. I have to contest the last swing, keep myself on a precious 3 life, and do my best to counter pressure with these cards I will be left with.
This is the thing that makes Illumina Ascension so smothering in these kind of aggressive race matchups, is this life gain, creating this rubber band effect where Boltyn just jumps back into the lead even if he wasn't there. He had a commanding position this game, and oh my god, he has another follow-up snatch as a chain ender here, an absolutely colossal amount of damage on offer this turn, ending in a snatch, ripping Nova's last card and essentially reducing his turn to nothing.
Well, to be fair to Nova, those last 2 cards were a pretty good reckless swing, coming in for 2 damage and 4 blocks. Basically, exactly what he needed in that position. However, Josh is once again sitting on 4 cards. The question is, can he convert them, or are we once again going to draw a bit of a clunker where we just can't find an efficient starter to actually keep the turn going with consistency?
Something interesting here, no blood rushes have been played. Josh's Balance of Justice still sitting on the board. He might have liked to have the hat that just charges and draws instead this game. But instead of bricking here, it looks like we're seeing V of the Vanguard played off of a Tunic counter, offering a fair bit of damage and putting a Banneret in soul. Josh may be considering whether he wants +1 or +2 on this combat chain.
Yeah, this is one of those really interesting questions to ask me and just think about just how low on soul can I end up, because I possibly get the chance to send 1 more attack on this turn if I choose to charge a single card, but it will result in me going down to 0 soul by the end of this turn. So thinking really carefully about if he can afford to do that. In this case, he says, I think it's worth the risk. We are going to try and push a little bit harder, burn a little bit more soul.
There's some very interesting math with regards to V of the Vanguard in that, generally speaking, it is usually mathematically comparable as long as you can go 3 chain links wide to charge 2 versus charging 1 and going 4 chain links wide. That is everything out of Nova's hand, but I believe he still has an Engulfing Shadows to work with. Spirit of War for 4 is the follow-up. No go again to speak of. Josh is out of soul here. I think Nova's going to get to live to see another day.
It really makes us wonder what that last card is. Is Josh just trying to insulate against being in that spot where he once again doesn't have a starter? Or
it's possible that card is Roaring Beam. I think I wouldn't be super duper shocked. He held on to another card. It is either a generic he could not charge to via the Vanguard, which I believe the only generic in this deck is Snatch, or it's Roaring Beam to use as a starter while out of soul.
Could be either of them. In this case, we are seeing a Beaming Bravado coming in for 3, gets pumped up to 4 because of the Boltyn ability, and we are immediately seeing the follow-up of the Boltyn reaction. Oh, this makes a lot of sense.
With that is a tougher card too.
That is a tougher card to convert while on that V of the Vanguard turn, and just Nova looking at attack after attack, saying, I just need some space to breathe. Please slow down. And Josh will not let him. Wait, but this is pumped.
Yeah, this is lethal.
The last card in the hand. Oh, that is lethal. And that is the end of the game. My goodness gracious. What an
anticlimactic Boltyn finish sometimes. Sometimes you kind of find yourself in these situations where you're grinding and grinding and grinding to just try and finally get those last points, and your opponent's like, wait, all I have is an attack. Am I just dead? Oh my god, I'm just dead. I guess I die. I'm dead.
Sometimes it is like that. But sometimes, on the flip side, you get those really awesome turns where you get to finish up with like a giant beacon of victory, or like a massive battlefield beacon turn into something. Oof, the highs and lows of Boltyn. And in this case, we got to see the highs of Boltyn. What an insane performance of the day. Ellie, I think you might be right. I think he's cracked.
I think they give my boy the juice. How do you feel, Josh? Do you feel you had 2 turns with no starter, so I kind of suspect you're not feeling like they gave our boy the juice. But tell me how you feel.
Man, I love Boltyn. I
love Boltyn.
Yeah, I think he really embraces them. I know you built your deck to be very aggressive. I'm sure you've mentioned on stream that this is Ellie's deck because we want the continuation of what happened in Super Slam. But I do think Boltyn kind of has to embrace like a mid-range style. Like sometimes you have insane turns, sometimes you have more calm turns. And you gotta just kind of play that back and forth. Like sometimes you have a simple turn where you set up a banneret of, get a quicken, get a courage, and then you have an explosive turn with 5 cards. Sometimes it's just, basic turns. So I feel like he can, in certain matchups, if you need to go all gas, no breaks, you can do that. But then he's also like content playing more mid-range, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, I think it's nice that there is a deck capable of asserting itself while still having mostly 3 blocks, because that is something I have liked about a lot of strong decks in Flesh and Blood's past. I know that's Yuki's favorite thing about Lexi was, I can beat the hell out of you, but also I just have a million 3 blocks.
Yep. Your deck was very, very smooth. I think we didn't get to see the Blessing of Bolana card, your spoiler card, unfortunately. But like I literally don't think I drew it or charged it or anything. So, but
I didn't
we got to see
Roaring
Beam.
The Roaring Beam turn 0 was so sick.
On the double turn 0 line was incredible.
Yeah, on the fleshbag turn, I actually had 2 red duty bound blitz. So that was a good
We
flashback from
noticed.
Nova.
Yeah.
Saved him 7 damage there.
The flashback was kind of a like, he missed the red duty band blitz. Like, what a bummer. And then we saw that the cardio arsenal was just another red duty band blitz, and it was like, oh, never mind, it didn't matter at all. That flashback blocked for 9.
Yeah, the illusion of choice.
I mean, it did block for 9. That was a pretty important turn to be blocking out because I mean, just that first V turn was so absurdly powerful. The moment we saw you jam 6 armor block, and I was like, okay, something big is happening, and something big was there to follow up. That said,
we can't give all the love to Boltyn.
It was
We can't give
all
all
about
the love to Boltyn.
I will say Levia started to show some of the prowess that she got. Nova, how did you feel about Levia in this game and some of the I saw you make some pretty tricksy plays there and drew our critical new card from set Engulfing Shadows. How are you feeling about Levia's position as we go into ProQuest season?
Yeah, I think the fight is pretty good because the new card, the Engulfing Shadows, like it's very good on the Levia because when you become a consul, you can use it on the opponent. It's just a 1 card 7 to 8. It's very good on the aggro.
To banish it and play it again later.
Yeah. And also the new card Pound of Flesh is a pretty good destruction on the fire. That like a
it's like a Shadow
Call.
Winter's Bite.
Yeah.
Call kind of card. Yeah. I can't believe that card's a rare. That's another blue majestic.
It's a blue.
Another pseudo majestic in the way that they kind of designed it. So we definitely got to see a little bit of Levia's power, and of course, when you get to flip over into Plasma Fed, I mean, just getting access to this suite of cards that you played earlier in the game and all of a sudden can play again. Those Engulfing Shadows, as you said, kind of each translating to like 8 value totally in like traditional fab maths. And unfortunately, while we didn't get to see that which was it? The Endless Maw come out to play again a second time. I mean, if you got a little more space, we could have seen the roaring return.
Because it's go to the banish zone. The Engulfing Shadow is just going to the banish zone.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's kind of seeing that translate into that kind of value was truly incredible. So concludes our match of light versus shadow. But thank you very much, players. TheCardGuyz once again taking the lead as we move forward into our next game. This case, we're heading back to a little bit more Silver Age to play. In fact, I think this was a matchup which we saw played out in the top 8 of our first showdown at the world premiere in London.
Yeah.
This is going to be Enigma versus Kano. And I mean, Kano fairly recently departed from us in Classic Constructed. I mean, I certainly know that I have friends and teammates who are mourning the loss of our boy Kano. But if you are missing sending in, well, maybe not Ether Wildfires, that one can stay gone. And maybe not Lessons in Lava either. And maybe not Ether Fairs. What's Kano do in Silver Jelly?
I feel like a huge part of the answer is he blasts the hell out of you with Emeritus Scolding. From what I understand, most Kano decks are playing 6. 2 blue, 2 yellow, 2 red. I think that Kano actually gets to do a lot of the things that made me fall in love with the hero before he became this mono wildfire deck, where you really get to play this like tempo strategy in which you kind of do a fair bit of blocking, zap them on your turn to try and kind of force cards out of their hand, then go for true damage on their turn just by flipping into spells and making the most out of what your hands are. You play a lot of cards like Cindering Foresight, do a lot of top deck management. I think this deck is incredibly tricksy, incredibly cool, and what I will also say is I think it is incredibly powerful. I think one of my primary questions about Compendium off the rip during spoiler season was, why is there so much wizard hate in this set? I found it pretty confusing early on, but once I kind of started to see the Kano deck get tuned and start to emerge, especially getting my ass beat over and over by Peter Bedensik and Majin Bay, at which point I realized, oh, Kano's really good. That's why there's so much Spell Void in this set.
It turns out the wizards were the problem all along. They weren't the problem.
Well, I didn't say that. I didn't say all that. I didn't say all that.
I'm a wizard enjoyer. On the other side of this match, we have our newest addition to the card, guys, Thomas Averette, piloting a deck which is wonderfully creatively and bad Noah, which I'm sure is referencing our good friend Noah Clark, Darkodius, who played this exact matchup, losing to Jacob Clements in the top 8. So I've got to say,
Really
that's
funny.
giving me a good laugh. Thomas ending up on the map quite recently for his performance with a Fatigue Pleiades deck alongside fellow card guy Damien Riggins at a very recent calling. So let's see, maybe we're ending up with something that is again a little bit defensive, maybe even fatigue oriented, although I'm not sure we're going to be fatiguing Kano. That will be quite a tall ask. We can see some copies of Red Brothers in Arms in this deck list. I mean, that is a card which is there to defend your auras so long as your opponent's dealing physical damage, which Kano will not be doing more than likely, so we might not get to see them deployed in this matchup. Besides that, there's no manifestations of Neuroguy to speak of, but we do need to talk about Astral Etchings, because I think this is the card that makes Enigma in Silver Age.
Being able to give +3 to your Spectral Shield as an instant, as long as you control an aura, or I believe it's a Spectral Shield, right? If you control Spectral Shield, you can play it
Spectral
as an
Shield,
instant.
you can play it as an instant, yeah.
Yeah, this 1 for 3 in essence, but ends up being worth so much more, as Enigma really revolves around this protect the president kind of play style, where your whole deck is really about making this gigantic free threat and swinging it over and over and repeatedly folding your hands and sort of gaining life by developing ward as opposed to literally gaining life. Very much a playstyle I would associate with Thomas and Damien, the kind of co-creators of what I, in good faith, dubbed the Giga Snooze Pleiades deck, perhaps. On a moderate amount of snooze Enigma deck here. I only kept using the Damien told me he liked the name, at which point I was like, okay, I'm calling this Giga Snooze forever.
Okay. Well, we have a co-creator's blessing on that name, so Giga Snooze Pleiades it is gonna have to be. But in this case, we will be seeing this Enigma deck, which I suspect is gonna have less fatigue going on, like pairing off against Kano. And there's a few cards in here which, you know what? If you haven't done your digging around the wizard card pool, you might not have come across some of these before. I want to start at the very top of the reds. Absorb and Ether is a card which I don't think has ever seen play in CC Kano since he really got on the map with the release of Ether Wildfire and Everfest. But this is a fiendishly powerful card in Silver Age, a 1 defense react that can pump your next arcane spell that you play this turn by 2 damage, is particularly powerful, kind of being a 1 for 6 value react on your opponent's turn. But you know how I said Kano wouldn't be sending physical damage? I spy some Fireballs Fighting Spirits. I spy a Wounded Bull. Maybe will be some.
I think that those cards are largely poppers, specifically for this matchup, actually. Though it doesn't hurt that in a pinch, they can definitely do a little bit of pushing over. Sometimes what you really need to get over Enigma's threatening board is to just send a big attack and then Kano into an instant speed spell to follow it once she has emptied her hand of defensive tools. So that's definitely 3 slots used for some really powerful cards in this matchup.
Absolutely. There's one more card I want to point out in the equipment suite. I'm not sure if we're going to see it in this matchup, but Unyielding Grip is a card which, for a while, I was thinking, okay, what are the applications of a piece of armor that only blocks 3 if you have no cards in hand? It turns out, if you spent all your cards just blasting your opponent in the face, it's kind of nice to have 3 block at the end of it. You can make it so that you're able to, as you said, just kind of tempo on your opponent's turn to send a bunch of damage with Kano. Armor to put at the end of it, so you can survive to a future turn. But
I do
we will
suspect
see.
we will see Hold Focus presented instead of those, but I do agree the unyielding grips are they're pretty smothering. I think I've found that there are a lot of aggro decks that I think could very much beat a 15 life Kano that just can't get over the hump of an 18 life Kano.
Indeed, sometimes 3 life or 3 armor is all the difference it takes to win a game of Flesh and Blood. But it's time to see if Wenlaw is actually going to decide to play that Hold Focus, or if it will be the Unyielding Grip to hold on just a little bit longer against Thomas, Averette, Enigma. Let's see what we end up with.
I'm really curious to see who is going first and how the equipment is presented here. Is Talisman really interesting focus? AB3 really and Wave of Reality as well on the Enigma side.
Absolutely. We're just going to end up going first in this game. It looks like it might be Thomas choosing to play out the Spectral Manifestations. And we get to see a pretty interesting aspect of the first versus second dynamic in this matchup in that, well, it's never truly your turn when you're playing against a Kano. It's our turn. So we might well see when deciding to just immediately start smashing Kano items, looking to destroy the Spectral Shield, which has been created with 3+1 counters on it.
Yeah, Spectral Manifestations is a really powerful card to end up leading the game with, but there's definitely a little bit of tension in the form of Kano having the opportunity to try and take it off the board.
Going in for 3 with Go again.
He can protect it, and he is even attacking here, looking to take some cards away from Kano, rather than hold up the attack to punish any actions taken. When looking to just filter or perhaps play around in Astral Etchings.
The block 6 here is suggesting that we might not see the ability to follow up with a way to destroy this Spectral Shield at instant speed. Thomas smells blood in the water and decides to send an Enigma Chimera coming in for 8 damage, leaving 2 resources floating plus the Wave of Reality to hopefully keep that Spectral Shield alive and force some damage through on this first turn of the game. And indeed, it looks like we're going to see 2 damage leak over, taking Kano's precious life total of 15 down to 13, and with Thomas kicking off the game with this Spectral Shield in play. It's Protect the Queen time. Let's see if Thomas can keep this Spectral Shield in play.
So earlier I said protect the president. Do you say protect the Queen because you live in the UK?
I guess. I don't know. Maybe that's a royalist thing. I gotta say, I'm not much of a monarchist myself, but maybe it started to infect me with maybe I've got monarchist brainworms now. Terrible business.
Sorry, got you a little bit there. It's like Bryce's bit where he was talking about Jacob being a soldier of the Queen.
That is a pretty excellent bit. We're seeing a pretty classic Kano turn cycle here. I mean, I never really played much Arcane Rising Limited, I've got to be honest with you. But I do know this card here, Voltic Bolt, was kind of a big deal. One of the tallest arcane spells you could be sending until we had the introduction of Burn Bear and Light Up the Leaves at the Majestic slot very recently, mind you.
I was going to say 2 cards for 6 arcane has a proven time and time again in the recent Classic Constructed metagame that even though it is just 2 cards for 6, that evasive damage is really nasty.
Thomas choosing to pitch away 2 reds, one of them being one of those red brothers-in-arms, maybe a little painful to see on a turn where your opponent has sent so much arcane damage, but keeping a suspicious 2 cards in hand. Could we be seeing one of those Astral Etchings played out this turn? Is Wen going to choose to respect that or just say, no blocks?
It is the Etchings, and Wen did say no blocks. Perhaps you having a bit of a prophetic moment here, calling out the entire turn as it plays out. 4 damage, though, isn't necessarily an amount a Kano at 13 cares about. And since Thomas has emptied his hand out here, Wen's just going to go for it and try to find an arcane spell off the top to just take this Spectral Shield off the board in response to the Astral Etchings. Not only blocking 4, but also just wasting all of these cards that Thomas has committed.
Indeed, a pretty crucially, well, not crucial, quite the opposite. A terrible time for Thomas to be seeing an all-red hand when the tempo has been stolen from him, and it looks like we see a Stir the Ether Winds off the top. Not really the spell you want to be seeing here. It's quite expensive to play out, but it is enough to be able to convert one of those cards from the hand, a Snapback, which, if it is pumped by the Stir the Ether Winds, I think they've resolved it such that, yes, the Snapbacks is coming in for 6 arcane damage, will be destroying the attacking shield on the way out. What an unbelievable blowout, and dealing 5 damage over the top.
To mention, if Thomas had anything with which to, follow up, he would have lost his action point there, as his attack died before resolving. not relevant there, but definitely a point of texture in this matchup, as Kano can often have you just losing your attack in response to the attack. Damn, Thomas really clumped up on reds here, pitching a red to play a blue. We know he has a chi in hand, but it's still far from the optimal resource loadout. You want to be a little bit more aggressive than this against Kano.
Not just any red either. Oh, this is absolutely brutal. We see the Spears of Surreality try to start the turn off, but Phantasm is triggered by that Wounded Bull in the blocks, just instantly stopping the turn. Thomas having pitched away a Moon Chakra, one of these really important kind of prevention cards to be able to survive the assault of damage that Kano might throw at you. And being left with one card in hand, which is now thankfully able to Arsenal at least, but how much stronger a card could it be than a Moon Chakra in this matchup, I wonder?
You definitely don't want to see that go by the wayside. And getting popped there are no Phantasmal Footsteps in this matchup. That does just mean Thomas's turn is over. And Wen has 4 cards to work with. Thomas just finally developed a shield. If Wen can find some pretty reasonable damage here, he's just not going to be able to get a board going. You would think this matchup would be bad if we're basing Silver Age decks off of their CC counterparts, as this matchup was pretty cursed for Kano in his time in Classic Constructed, but both decks being powered down enough has Kano pretty capable of going over the top.
Absolutely. We see an Emeritus Scolding Banish, sadly on Wen's turn here, so he's not going to get the full value out of that card, but damage is damage is damage in this situation. So it could be a situation where he decides to play it out, buffing it with the Crucible of Aetherweave, or possibly looking at the 2 cards left in hand and saying, you know what, I think I can do better than that.
Like, he is just going to ship Crucible of Aetherweave and an Emeritus Scolding with his remaining cards here. Not terribly efficient, but without some prevention, 4 is going to take that Spectral Shield off the board, as Thomas only has AB3.
Notably choosing to overpitch that copy of Absorbent Ether, which we noted earlier kind of when looking at the deck list, maybe deciding that it's not quite time for me to be trying to take the kill shot, which is often the function of that card in Silver Age Kano. Instead, looking for just a little bit more tempo, access to some blues, maybe access to another popper. We've seen the 1 Wounded Bull and 1 Flyinbell's Fighting Spirit so far, but there is at least 1 more copy of Flyinbell's Fighting Spirit left to find, which could stop a critical Enigma Chimera or Spears of Surreality.
On the critical meme today, we're saying critical as much as possible.
Yes. Yeah, that's my word of the day. That's my word of the day.
That's the caster word. Critical. Shield leaving the board. Like I said, Thomas is really struggling to get too much going. Thankfully, an attack without Phantasm here, and thanks to that chi lurking in the hand, I suspect we are going to see this Fluid Motion be a 2 go again. If there's finally going to be a turn where Thomas gets off the ground, this looks like it.
Indeed. Fluid Motion, a bit of an innocuous card at first. It was one that, I think if you haven't played the Mystic Heroes, it seems a little strange to value a 0 for 2 go again in your blues, but you start to really recognize just how much these cards can offer you in terms of, first of all, the need to actually transcend, as we see here with the play of the Rising Sun and Setting Moon, such that we can enable Enigma's powerful hero power to create a Spectral Shield with a +1 counter, get the chance to swing with it, go a little bit wider on the turn. But a card like Fluid Motion is a blue, it's a 3-block. It has some offensive output with Go Again, which actually lets you utilize the chi that you transcend. This is a real workhorse card, which we've seen introduced by Silver Age. Sorry, by Compendium of Rathe,
this card has essentially, well, this was introduced by Silver Age, as it is in the Silver Age precons, so you are technically correct.
Absolutely.
Which is the best kind of correct, if I can show my age by quoting that phrase. I also think something that is really attractive about this card is mostly just that it replaces a card in Enigma's card pool that had Phantasm. You were playing Spectral Prowler, which was very similar, a card that gains Go Again if you control a Spectral Shield. That was also a 3-block 0 for 2 with Go Again, but it had Phantasm, which was really serious downside compared to this card. We saw just how nasty your blue starters having Phantasm can be the previous turn. And, I mean, if we take a look, the 7 was waiting in Kano's hand here.
Indeed. In this case, Thomas may be quite thankful that it was here this time around because he left himself quite exposed when he played out this Waxing Spectre with just a single resource floating. In theory, had enough blues in hand, could have said, you know what, this is my moment. I'm going to try and go off in your face with just a single resource floating and send as much damage as humanly possible. But it looks like the Pauper being in hand, the Fireballs Fighting Spirit, has given Thomas a little bit of room to breathe, perhaps, rather than eating a load of arcane damage and actually resolving this Waxing Spectre.
This is the turn that if Enigma was going to find an end to this game, since she was struggling so much to get anything going, this is the kind of bread and butter turn she needs. Establish multiple pieces of ward while presenting a fair bit of damage to the opponent. And Hold Focus is going to show us exactly what it's in this deck for. That Amp 1 is crucial for getting over big scary board states like this. Stir the Ether Winds, also pumping this next attack up by a total of 5. A massive spell coming in.
One tall spell, and it's not just any spell. It is perhaps the best spell that Kano could be choosing to send in this spot. There's not many kind of arcane on-hit effects left in the format with a card like Ether Flare banned out of Silver Age, but I'll tell you what one of the best ones is. It is good old Ether Spindle, giving Kano a nice detailed look at his next hand so we can sculpt exactly how he's going to kill you on your own turn.
And most of the time what Kano's sculpting for is 4 blues on top of the deck. Or 3 blues in a snapback, let's be fair.
That's true. Snapback, I mean, that is a card that I have really missed playing, I'm not going to lie. I think one of the biggest draws to me playing Wizards in this format is Snapback is perhaps one of my favorite card designs, like, ever, and I cannot wait to be playing with that card again.
How do you feel about Lightning Snapback?
Oh, the Lightning Snapback? You mean a Lightning Snapback that I can pump with Volzar so it comes in for 4 instead of 3? Oh, be still my beating heart.
That card is pretty sweet. I'm quite fond of it. I think Azalea plays a lot more like a wizard. Thomas finding basically exactly what he needs here, except for a blue. This is 7 prevention here so far. Still gonna need to engage in some AB or just give up the Waxing Spectre. This Ether Spindle isn't going to connect, but it is going to take a unit off the board and really reduce the power of Thomas's turn.
It makes a lot of sense that Thomas chose to arsenal that, kind of clearly drawing both moon chakras in the same hand, arsenaling one and pitching the other way for that Astral Etchings that we saw so long ago. Coming in for just a simple 2 with Go Again. Once again, Wen could decide to just dig for the spell here, look for an opportunity to destroy this spectral field before it can attempt to deal its damage, or could just choose to respect it with a block depending on the texture of the hand.
Definitely a difficult question. It does look like he's thinking of finding the spell to take it off the board here. Thomas only has 2 cards to work with and is out of basically all of the prevention in his deck. Outside of 1 Oasis Respite. The Moon Chakra is still in the deck, but it is at the bottom. We're going to see if Wen has any response to this Essence of Ancestry Body. Crucible activation. Looks like this is on Wen's turn. Rousing Ether played at quote-unquote action speed. 5 damage, no other effects. No, that's not true. This increases the damage.
That's not true. Rousing Ether has this really cool effect where it's going to pump your next spell this turn by 1, which means Wen is presumably planning some kind of follow-up Kano activation to actually leverage the power of that ability. Rousing Ether, a card which, I mean, if you've had a little dig through, I think this was a Crucible card, if I remember correctly. So it's never even really seen play in Limited, and certainly hasn't seen play in Classic Constructed. I mean, this is a card that I don't think it really saw play until this moment. So once again, the joys of Silver Age breathing new life into some card pools.
5 arcane damage, likely a follow-up on offer here. Looks like AB3 from Thomas Averette, just giving up that ward 2, Essence of Ancestry. Effect not triggered since he controls another aura, and it looks like Wen just passes, holding a card in hand. I'm curious what he's trying to set up here. He didn't follow up that Rousing Ether with multiple cards available to him.
This is the kind of...
a kill shot.
game of chicken that we see start to play out in this matchup, with both players feeling like they're prepared for each other, but only the top deck on Kano's side and maybe the Arsenal on Enigma's side might determine the fate of this game. Wen is choosing to immediately activate Kano in response to the Spectral Shield swinging in 4-2. Perhaps having Arsenal something like a snapback to be able to really make this the kill turn as long as he can put Thomas's hand to the test. In this case, finding one of those copies of Emeritus Scolding, which we said are so important in the matchup, and this time finding it with the timing to get the full 5 points of arcane damage value out of it, potentially even one more courtesy of the Crucible of Aetherwind.
Well, yellow Emeritus, classic staple of every format ever.
And one that you can pick up in cold foil thanks to our brand new tournament packs.
Oh wait, that's actually true.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's kind of cool that they've breathed life into this card. You know, once again, it's like nobody was playing Emeritus Scolding before Silver Age, and now all of a sudden, hey, this card's not so bad.
Good shout, good shout. I'm glad this tournament packs. I think they're cool. I like having more Marvel in deck cards. I think for quite some time, one of my primary complaints about the shape and structure of a lot of cold foil promos was that they were only available for permanents, which kind of unfairly favored illusionists.
Ooh, this is a really brutal follow-up for Thomas in this situation, with the Absorbent Ether pumping this Emeritus Scolding up to 7, but Thomas having the Oasis Respite in Arsenal plus AB3 to fully prevent the damage, while Wenlaw has blocked out the turn. He has spent that Absorbent Ether trying to push over the top, trying to destroy the Spectral Shield, but to no avail. Unless there's a snapback to follow up, coming in for 4 arcane damage. Taking both auras off the board in this case.
Still quite a few cards left in both players' decks. This game has been pretty long in the tooth, but there's just been so much pitching. Both players around 25-ish cards. Enigma definitely more in deck. 25 in hand versus Kano's 20. 25 in deck versus Kano's 24. Fatigue may be on the table. Kind of tough to say. No instance on Kano's turn.
We are seeing a lot of prevention tools come out to play here. We know that there is one of those moon chakras left in the stack, so if that is positioned correctly such that Thomas can encounter it before Wen gets access to his really big arcane damage turn, we could see this end in a fatigue situation with access to AB3 and, of course, the all-important ward from Enigma's auras. This is not what we want to see happening with Emeritus Scolding, with a red Emeritus Scolding, no less. We want to see these ripped off the top for 6 damage, not blocked for 3.
And 6 on offer here. Kano is only at 6 life, and it looks like he's just drawn this brutal handful of reds. I think his only real saving grace on this turn cycle is that Enigma has failed to develop any ward and truly punish this big stumble, but Kano being forced to just pass the turn here isn't where the Arcane Wizard wants to be. He needs to find a way to close this game out, and more ward is hitting the table here.
Thomas having access to all 5 cards in his hand on his own turn for the first time in a long time, and finding perhaps one of the best starters in the situation in a Waxing Spectre. This was an absolute draft all-star for Enigma, sending in for 4 damage with Go Again and representing that critical Ward 3 to be able to survive some of Kano's arcane damage. I need a critical counter.
Good old 2-card 7. That kind of swells out of control every turn it sticks on the board. That's really the Enigma classic. She has these cards that represent excellent rate the turn they come down. A lot of 2-card 7s, 2-card 8s. Her majestic Manifestations of Miragai being this 2-card 12 if a Chi pitched to it. Just excellent rate the turn they come down, and if they ever get to spend an extra turn on the boy, buddy, you got a storm coming.
Reminds me of Dromai in many ways, who also was in a similar spot. You know, her dragon's usually able to get some pretty effective value as long as they were not popped with Phantasm. And then if they, table the turn cycle, then oh my goodness, you are in for it.
Cindering Foresight, definitely one of the things Kano uses to get things off the board. I believe this is the first one we've seen played this game. Gonna opt 3 and increase the damage of the next card played as an instant, and it is allowed to play itself as an instant if it is your opponent's turn.
Indeed, this kind of doesn't seem like when looking for the opportunity to aim for the kill turn here, but more so looking for the chance to just stabilize the board state and hopefully prepare the kill turn for the following turn. After all, Thomas does have 3 cards remaining and Arcane Barrier 3 to try and get through.
This is a really crucial spot to be going for this. If he can kill this card and take Thomas's action point away like he just did, he can finally find a little bit of breathing room. He only has 2 cards to work with, but it's better than nothing.
Indeed, we still haven't seen that second red Voltic Bolt. I wonder if we might see it now. Lo and behold, red Voltic Bolt coming in for 6 arcane damage. This one is going to be hard to prevent unless we can see another one of those instant speed auras like a Waning Vengeance come out to try and prevent some of the damage. But in this case, it's just going to be straight up 83, leaving 3 cards in the hand, 1 in arsenal. Kano going up to 4 cards plus almost the full suite of equipment available to try and push some damage on this turn.
Spectral Prowler played here. I don't remember if Kano, I believe Kano has 1 popper left to work with.
Okay, this is a really important moment where Wen has seen what is happening. There's a Spectral Prowler played. This Transcend, the Homage to Ancestors, must be played in response so that Thomas can try to create a Chi and pitch it to activate Enigma before the Spectral Prowler ability resolves. But at this moment, both of these cards are in the layer step. They are on the stack, which means neither of them are in Thomas's hand to try and defend himself against the storm of Arcane, which Wen is going to try and send at this very moment to try and close out the game. The second
to the bottom is not what you want your Talismanic Lens to do. Wen is playing in the blind here. He has no information on the top of his deck unless he has set up a pitch stack.
We are getting pretty close to that pitch stack, I think, at this point from Kano's perspective, because with the number of cards that he rips off the top and the degree to which he pitches, I think we might be getting close, but I do believe we are still in first cycle. And given that we had some real stinky all-red hands to work through from Kano's perspective earlier in this game, the end of first cycle might not have the reds that he is looking for to try and push lethal here.
Yeah, a lot of reds forced to block with here. We are seeing a Kano activation. Checking the top. He's got to find something here. Life gain and board developed isn't where you want to be. A blue photon splicing off the top. It's something, but not quite good enough when your opponent has AB3 to work with. Another Kano activation. Maximum 6 resources left to work with isn't much. And it's a blue Voltic Bolt.
Some pretty good damage, but I don't know if it is going to be enough in this situation. Thomas representing at best the ability to prevent 3 damage from his hand, but also the potential for some prevention or even some life gain from Arsenal, perhaps.
Yeah, if his Arsenal is that last Moon Chakra that is in his stack, which I don't think he's quite there, it could be really nasty.
There's another card which it could be. I'm not sure. I need to double check if it is in Thomas's deck list, but one of the classic 0-cost plays against a deck like Kano is something like Arcane Polarity. I do wonder if that might be something that Thomas might have stashed.
I haven't seen many Enigma decks on Polarity, but it could make sense. 4 arcane damage on offer. Looks like Thomas is considering just taking it here. No lethal represented by Wen. 2 damage
Thomas
available.
does not have copies of Arcane. Does not have copies of Arcane Polarity in his deck list, so we are unlikely to be seeing much prevention or much life gain happening from the Arsenal. Starting out with just this 4 arcane damage over the top. Is Thomas able to reveal what is left in his hand? He's choosing not to.
Spellfire Cloak gonna cash in for this photon splicing, it looks like.
Coming in for 2. Once again, just trying to push a little bit more damage over the top here.
I wonder what he could have as his last card in hand. Maybe it's a popper.
Thomas with the slightest hesitation, but no fear, recognizing this is the moment. I need to go down to 1. I need to bluff what is in my hand, or perhaps just hold out a little bit more hope that he goes for the kill and cannot find it. Instead, we are making the Spectral Shield, resolving the trigger on the Spectral Prowler, coming in for 2 with Go Again. One is going to be saying no blocks.
No popper in hand. 2 more. I wonder if Wen's last card is like an energy potion or something that doesn't block.
It does feel like it might be a blue, and that we're just looking for the opportunity to try and send it.
Manifest Muscle coming in for 6 here.
Thomas is calling the bluff, sending in a 2-card 6, but with no resources floating. If this is a blue left in Wen's hand, then he can look for that arcane spell, find a 0-cost spell, and try and end the game with it. But if this card is not a blue, and even if it is a blue and he can't rip the spell that he needs off the top, this is lethal presented on the stack, coming in for 6 damage.
Looks like a Kano activation.
The fateful Kano.
Is there a zap on the top?
And it would have to be a red zap or a yellow zap specifically.
It's Absorb in Ether.
It is an Absorb in Ether, which we saw pitched so long ago in the game, which cannot be banished with Kano's ability, which means we're going to see that card pitched away for nothing. And 6 damage to Kano's face for lethal.
That is the way of Kano sometimes. Your games kind of often build into this one crescendo turn where he is just forced to go for it as you increasingly apply pressure to him, and he finds it or he doesn't. And one way or another, there is often this slightly anticlimactic death where one of you realizes, either I'm dead or you're dead, like, let's see what happens. And in that case, it was, unfortunately, Kano. I believe that is the victory point for the TheCardGuyz in this show match as well, Shamir.
Indeed, that does take the TheCardGuyz up to 3 points, where Blue Pitch so far has only won a single one of their matches, which means one way or another the TheCardGuyz are going to be our victories here. But we will see if Blue Pitch is able to save some face in the last round. We have our players in the booth. Congratulations, Thomas and Wen, on a fantastic game. I've got to say, you described the ending of that game maybe as a little anticlimactic. Ellie, I'm going to play devil's advocate. I think that game had some real thrills going throughout it, despite some awkward draw sequences on both your parts. Thomas, seeing that first all-red hand that you drew as you went into your first turn had us in the lurch. How did you go about navigating that game after seeing such an awkward early hand?
Okay, so I talked to Noah. Here, let me turn my volume down. I'm on a laptop. I talked to Noah before getting into this match because he's the one who made the deck. That's why it was literally called Bad Noah in the list, because I'm the Bad Noah. And
oh, we did notice the naming. Okay,
yeah.
So this was Noah's list properly. Excellent stuff. We're happy to hear that. Props to Noah Clark.
Okay, hold on. Let me fixing volume things. I'm directing and playing all at the same time. Okay. Yes, I talked to Noah Clark and he said just make Kano have it every turn. If you ever kind of pull the brakes and try to stack up, you can't do that. His deck's too explosive, and the way the tempos work, you're never going to get a chance to do anything. So I just said, okay, I'm just going to push in and just hopefully my reds will get there and keep my life total just high enough. I'll pitch him to AB if I have to. And it worked out. I went to 1.
Indeed, seeing in that very last turn where you just kind of held your nerve, absolutely steely resolve as you go to 1, allowing that Homage to Ancestors to resolve and the Spectral Prowler following it. And then when just being in this position where it's all or nothing, the top card will win or lose the game. And then seeing that unfortunate Absorb in Ether on the top. How did you feel going about playing Kano in this matchup? It feels like it has a very different dynamic to the way that it used to play in CC.
Yeah, I'm thinking if Kano is against Enigma, you should every time I think if you in your turn you get 1 arcane damage, and on the other turns and the opponent turn you have to pay another arcane damage, so you can stop the Enigma to do something big. And since they all always was, so if I pay 6 arcane and he can defend 6 more, so I will break their walk and stop their turn. So I'm thinking this this gameplay may be quite good on this matchup.
Indeed, it certainly made the matchup.
Play on this angle of actively trimming down how much ward Enigma is allowed to keep on the board, because if she starts to get multiple things on the board, you can't really ever get through. So it's definitely about those tall arcane spells.
Yeah, and I think maybe I should try not getting proper in this deck, because you really want to every time. Yeah, the capability can work on opponent's turn or in my turn. Yeah. So and unfortunately, if I get the 0-3 arcane, so I will beat this game. But yeah, because the first cycle is not really good, so I just yeah, a little bit unfortunately. So the second cycle is coming and no more no any the red card on the top there, so I lose this game.
Yeah, it's hard to it's hard to activate Kano in the first cycle when there's still 3 poppers and 2 absorbing ethers in the deck.
Yeah, 3 poppers.
It did seem like a game where the first cycle was a very important part of the story, and both of you had points where your first cycle hands weren't fully cooperating with you, and it made things just a little bit awkward. I think you reached towards the very top of your pitch stack, the way we saw those blues banished on that very last turn, followed by the Absorbent Ether, which I remember you choosing to overpitch at one point. So unfortunately, it just meant that we had to burn out some of the reds on blocking duty instead of getting them into the pitch stack. But that's the way Kano plays sometimes.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much, players. Congratulations on a fantastic game, and we look forward to seeing what you have cooked up next for both Silver Age and for CC. But for now, it's time for our last game of the night, and I think we've picked out one of the spicier picks in CC for this one. Damien Riggins, as we mentioned, perhaps known for playing these kind of slower, fatiguier decks, and perhaps that means we shouldn't be batting an eyelid when we see him choose to play Teklo. Although, if you look at some of the cards Teklo got access to in Compendium of Rathe, maybe we're not down that fatiguier route anymore. We'll get the chance to have a look at that when we get to see their decks, but he's going up against the Ninja Master, the Katsu Master specifically, Pudding Tom, and well, think about what both these heroes have gained out of Compendium of Rathe.
So Katsu didn't necessarily get too incredibly much. We'll get to that. We got a couple cards. I'm definitely curious. Yeah, it does look like Damien's deck throwing us for a loop. He tends towards these defensive piles, but defensive this is not. There's a block card. Did you see that Firewall 4 block? But for the most part, this is quite a proactive Teklo deck, and I do think this boost Teklo deck has gotten like much stronger with Compendium of Rathe. I think it's, they said early on about this set, we really think we made Teklo whole, and I think a lot of people scoffed at that idea, but I do just feel like he really does feel like a complete hero now. You're capable of playing this boost game plan where you eventually resolve these evos thanks to these new 1-block base blues, and then eventually play out a singularity. You kind of get to be mid-rangey, develop some evos, do some blocking. You get to boost at your opponent and beat the hell out of them when you have tempo, and if a game goes too long, you can resolve a singularity. I do think he seems like legitimately really strong as a proactive deck after Compendium. I think the question is mostly one of the shape of the meta. I'm not necessarily sure how friendly it is to tackle those in right now. I think you don't really want to see Fi. I think you don't really want to see Marionette. But I do think there are a lot of decks in the game that this deck just looks really strong against.
I think that's a really astute evaluation of Teklo Vosson's position following the release of so many new cards in Compendium of Rathe. Just to name a few, I think it's kind of a tale of two halves with what Teklo Boltyn has gotten access to. First of all, this suite of zero-cost boost cards, which actually feel like they're extremely tailored for him. Blast Rig, this boost card, zero-cost boost card that gets better more Evos you have equipped. Heavy Metal Hardcore that benefits you boosting away Evo cards. And of course, Teklo Trebuchet, this blue boost card that I think every mech main looks at and goes, hallelujah, what an incredible piece of support for the class. But then we need to talk about the Evo base set of equipments. These are the cards that I think have really taken Teklo over the edge, not only discounting future Evos that he plays on top of them, which means that instead of playing the Evo Steel Souls for 4, he's paying them for 3, which is a much more convenient resource curve to be playing out. But on top of that, we just see an increase of density of blue Evos such that you're boosting, and what's that? I boosted an Evo. I'm boosting away. I'm banishing cards that I can play. Teklo Boltyn, the newest Shadow Hero. And he can even flip into a Shadow Hero, which is kind of cool.
For quite some time with a couple of my friends, we have a running joke that is like, Teklo is kind of this design where I do think if he is ever beyond a certain level of good, he's gonna start really pissing people off because you're just gonna play against this guy that's like, oh, I'll play a 0 to 60 boost. Oh, look, I drew a card. And I think that's really gonna get under people's skin when this guy is a bit more of a meta force.
Yeah, you know what's better than a 0 for 4 go again? 0 for 4 go again, draw a card unconditionally. I hear that's kind of good in the game of Flesh and Blood. But time will tell.
Is that you?
Is that you? So time will tell. Our community can crack Teklo Boltyn if we'll see if Damien is on the right track with this deck build. And you could be on the cutting edge of Teklo deck building. Teklo mains, now is the time. I've got a few friends I know who are absolutely psyched to see this hero built up. But not all of the hype is for Teklo Boltyn. Let's see what Katsu has picked up in Compendium of Rathe. We know it's become the bottle earlier, and we can see 3 copies of it in Pudding's deck. The absolutely classic name, Unbanned Bonds of Ancestry. I think we'll stick at 3 copies in the red. Please and thank you, Pudding.
Yeah, we're seeing that new card from the set, Tigrine Reflex. It's another ancestral empowerment, only for combo cards, notably, but it's also a 3-block 0 for 3, I believe. That
I think it is a 2-block.
Is it a 2-block? Yeah. I thought it was a 3-block. Tigrine.
I think it is unfortunately a 2-block, which is
it's a 2-block, but it can also be pouncing chi.
Yes, I think the biggest deal about it is that it is. I mean, you might wonder what can Katsu do with a Crouching Tiger, and I think the important thing to remember about Crouching Tigers is that they are cards with 0 cost, and Katsu loves discarding any old card from his hand with 0 cost to be able to tutor for anything from his deck. It kind of feels like, as you mentioned, a bit of an ancestral empowerment effect where if you draw one in the hand, you can give that critical attack +1 to ensure it connects, discard the tiger that you created from the Tigrine Reflex, and find what you need. But that's not the only new bit of spice here. I want to point out something happening in the equipment. First of all, 2 copies of Harmonized Kodachi. I don't remember the last time I saw a Katsu playing Kodachi. We saw Katsu's really leaning on this combination of Edge of Autumn with a Kana Scar Wrap, and this is where the new card comes into play, folks. Wind Cutter? We're fetching Shuriken now? Hold up.
I think Wind Cutter is a really sweet new get. I think it's you do have to pay for it, but instead of a free breaking scales, you get access to a paid breaking scales 3 times per game, which you can use then and there off the rip after you search the Silverwind Shuriken, or you can stack them up. I have seen a friend of mine kind of set up against Victor Goldmane, actually, to get over that hero by just stacking 3 Shuriken on the board and saying, like, look, buddy, I'm getting my Katsu trigger this turn.
Indeed. I mean, there's nothing scarier than the idea of, oh, what if they have the empowerment? What if they have what if they use their Scar Ups here? But when you see all 3 of them on the board, we're past the point of fear. We're at the point of utter despair as you look at your Katsu opponent, grin, activate their Heart and Cross Trap, and say, you're going to die this turn. So let's see if Pudding is capable of pulling off that absolutely gigantic combo turn, courtesy of Bondry and some of these new cards Tiger Reflex, and Wind Cutter. Let's make our way over to the game and see if Blue Pitch can recover in this very last game. I think it is a tough matchup for Teklo, but boost cards be boosting. Let's see if Teklo can draw some cards and find a way to outplay what is typically a difficult matchup for him.
Looks like we are also starting off with the cog workspaces. A little bit interesting. I feel like I might have expected 4 of the adaptive alpha molds, as those just have Battle Worn 1, but perhaps Damien sees something in the activated abilities of those 2 pieces of equipment, one of them being a one-time Teklo Foundry Heart. And on the topic of what we were talking about, 0 for 4.
Hey, what's that about a 0 to 60 that draws a card?
Let's talk about a 0 to 60 that draws a card. There's an Evo Beta Base Arms, the first card banished from Damien's deck here.
A pretty fantastic rip off the top, and on top of that, you're talking about these Cogworks equipment. These Cogworks equipment were not really something that Teklo had access to before, outside of like draft. Because why would Teklo be boosting? There just wasn't a good reason to be doing it in the past. And all of a sudden, wait a minute, if he really wants to, he can be doing this. We see yet another new card banished, a really, really important card, no less. Ghost Protocol Mainframe. This is one of those, like, I mean, we talk about when Teklo's fully online, he's capable of sending ridiculously overrate cards. This is a 0 for 5 that you can banish and functionally draw off the top of your deck like a Shadow Hero. Now, in this case, it's just a
0
for
for 1.
1.
You've boosted 1 free value away and just gotten it for free, you know?
It's true. It merely comes at the cost of your action point. We'll see if Damien is going to choose to use his action point in that way. In this case, just saying, you know what? I don't need to send it. It's okay. I'm just going to choose to pass this turn, not let my opponent filter anymore, and see what I can do. We've got access to those 1 Evo arms in the banish zone to start with, and it's the typical Katsu starter. You know it, you love it, or you hate it if you're sitting across from it. Surging Strike for 5 would go again.
Revealing a War Machine. This is not an Evo, so it's going to go to the bottom of the deck, thanks to Firewall's ability. 5 covered up, and no tricks from Katsu, except the follow-up of Be Like Water, with 1 floating, pretty obnoxious. This 1 represents actually quite a bit here. I didn't necessarily think about the implications of Wind Cutter, but if this hits, Pudding can pay the 1 to name this Surging Strike and go get a Gust Wave. And if it doesn't hit, he just gets to pay 1 and set up that Silver Wind Shuriken.
Well, there is one more restriction on the Wind Cutter to bear in mind, which is you can only activate that ability if you have hit twice this combat chain. And so far,
I don't think I realized
has hit 0 times. So unfortunately, while the card is very powerful, it does require a little bit more investment for you to get the payoff of setting up those shurikens into play.
Look at me not reading cards.
Reading cards is hard. I don't read. I just vibe. That's why I'm a Runeblade player.
Yeah, same.
Damien choosing to block with another powerful Majestic, our Ghost Protocol Architect. This one is kind of like a tutor for Evos, but in this case, once again saying we're not quite ready for it, and I would rather stop that Be Like Water from connecting.
Here comes Zipper Hit, pitching away a red Fabricate, a non-blocking card. Banishing, can't draw cards 3 times, though he can twice. Just banishing a Teklo Trebuchet this time. 5 go again on offer, nothing floating. Curious to see what
we
the
do
rest
see
of the
that
turn is.
card.
May just be a 2-card 5.
We do see that card suspiciously arsenaled earlier. I do wonder what it might be. In this case, we're just passing the turn. We're not going to get to see it just yet.
Katsu
once
sending another Surging Strike. Red Surging Strike 2 turns in a row to start
We're
the chain
throwing it back like it's Welcome to Rathe, because nothing beats a Surging Strike to start the turn.
Five blocked by an Evo and... Oh, no. Looks like Damien is giving it a little bit more thought. That Synapse Spark Cap is such a powerful card. I really like that card. It's like Evanfold, repeatable.
It does seem like, when you read the card, and it looks insanely powerful. Interestingly, I've seen it activated a lot less than I expected to see it activated in the Teklo testing that I have seen so
shelf
far.
life on activating the card, since after a certain point you lose the ability to playing an Evo over it, but it definitely smooths out your early game quite a bit.
That's a fair point. That's a fair point. I think the cost of your action point is maybe one of the more significant costs on it, which maybe hinders it from being, well, absurdly broken. And I suppose we're all thankful for that. It looks like the Surging Strike is connecting for the full 5 damage, and putting now the world is his oyster. He has the opportunity to consider what exactly. Ooh, we do see the Tigerine Reflex, I think, discarded in this case for the +1. First things first, to create that tiger in the hand, saying, you know what, I'm going to get the value one way or another, because I can get my free 1 damage, and on top of that, end up with a tiger that I can discard for Katsu's ability. I think this is such a cool and powerful use of the card, and it comes with a little bit of risk attached, no less, because, I mean, drawing multiple Tigerine Reflex in the hand, less than ideal. Not really what he wants to be seeing it, but if you can draw 1 every now and then, it really does feel like just extra copies of Ancestral Empowerment. Just a brutally powerful card.
And of course, the search will be putting his favorite card, Bonds of Ancestry, which makes me imagine he has a Gust Wave in the hand. Yellow Whelming Gust Wave hitting the table here. Not the most standard inclusion, but a great one of to have as a Lynx target. 3, go again, on hit, draw a card.
Oh and my god, this case Ancestral Empowerment as well. Oh my goodness. I mean, this is the classic Trixie Katsu, right? Like, oh, you think you can stop my on hits? No, you cannot. So actually, I will be drawing 2 cards over the course of this turn, effectively getting at least kind of 2 free value from these pseudo ancestral effects. But on top of that, a card draw from the Whelming Gust Wave, which is now going to swiftly be followed up by a Bonds of Ancestry, no doubt. Begs the question, what is in Pudding's graveyard to actually target with Bonds?
He also has 1 floating and has now met the condition to use that Wind Cutter. So that connecting may just let him convert that resource he might not have otherwise gotten to use on this turn.
Indeed. One thing that can be tricky about Katsu is when you're in the spot where you're wielding Kodachis and Surging Strike combo, I mean, there's 1 floating, but he's not actually really able to leverage his Kodachis anymore without breaking the flow of his combo. Certainly couldn't place it after the Surging Strike, nor after this Whelming Gust Wave. Perhaps he'd have had the chance to do so after this Bonds of Ancestry, but why do that when you can cash in a Shuriken on the board instead?
Looks like he's going and getting another Gust Wave here, I suspect. Okay, no, not another Bonds, just a Tigerine Reflex in the hand. Wind Cutter activation here as well in reactions. So just using the Tempest Palm Gust Wave as a 0 for 3, go again with combo.
You know, I mentioned the potential downsides of drawing 2 Tigerine Reflex in the turn, but I suppose the upside is, well, if you're getting to pull off your combo, worst case, it's just a 0 for 3 finisher at the end of the turn. And if that's your floor...
also situations where you can use the Crouching Tiger to make it a 0 for 4.
That's true. You could end up actually, you know, using it for full power.
It's kind of a funny card in this deck because you're really mostly using it to dig for more free cards, huh?
Yeah, I mean, most of the time when I would see a Twin Drive double boost in the past, my alarm bells ring for either Pulse Wave Harpoon or Maximum Velocity. But when I see it in Teklo, I think they're just going, oh, they're just being greedy. They just want to draw a card, don't they? And to be fair, my Shadow Heart speaks to it as well. Yes, I do want to draw a card.
Teklo is kind of a pretty cool embodiment of that shadow design philosophy of power at a cost, you know? Looks like an Evo Beta base chest equipped here with his last action point. Not the most powerful turn for Teklo, but it does look like he's drawn into a Singularity with only 2 Evos on the board. Bit brutal.
Might be a little bit premature. I wouldn't be surprised if we do see that card blocked within the chance of a Singularity this game. Eliminated for the time being.
Oh my god!
It's yet another Ancestral Empowerment to save the day.
Become the Bottle, not named anything other than Become the Bottle, but carrying that Ancestral Empowerment with aplomb, getting a Katsu trigger, and coming over by 1. Pudding's gonna get to combo off yet again this turn. You thought this was the one turn he didn't have the Surging Strike starter? Think again.
think again. It's always there. This is one of those interesting positions where you think about, okay, so they've already played their first chain, like they committed one card to the combat chain already. I wonder what they might fetch here. And of course, it depends on the texture of the rest of the hand. I'd be thinking about things like, indeed, possibly to find something like Descendant Gust Wave at this point, something like a guaranteed go again kind of starter, given that we need to find a way to initiate some combo chains.
Yeah, definitely curious. We might just see a more simple search like 100 wins on this turn. Just go get a 0 for 3 with go again. Looks like it is going to be Descendant Gust Wave, which makes me imagine Pudding does have a Bonds to work with, or a Retrace the Past.
Pitching away an Ancestral Harmony to actually play out that Descendant Gust Wave, coming in for just 3 with go again to start with, and as expected, it is not time for a Singularity just yet. We will see that card blocking for 3, but the follow-up is, of course, Pudding's favorite, Bonds of Ancestry, the broken card.
This card is messed up. Talk about Saber Bloodshed, is that you? This is a 0 for 4 that does go and get something out of your card.
We have been enjoying these 0 for 4's unconditional draw card, haven't we?
Well, this one's like conditional. You know, you gotta
That's true.
jump through
That's
it's
true.
so fair. You have to jump through a hoop, Shamir.
It's true. It's not like you can chain multiples of them on a turn and tutor for them or anything like that. That would be crazy.
It's not like the card doesn't say a card other than Bonds of Ancestry. Nobody's ever played 9 of these before.
No.
That's just too many.
I wish I'd gotten to draft with them more. Just such a Outsiders, my beloved, my favorite draft set of all time.
I really like this card in Limited. I wish it was in a set that wasn't Outsiders. I'm not yucking your yum. Outsiders just isn't for me.
You're allowed to yuck my yum anyway. I fully acknowledge that Outsiders was not perfect, but man, I did enjoy it so much, I'll be honest.
I like Azuri. I like Azuri a lot, which makes me like that set more than I would otherwise, but I felt like it was some pretty low power Limited. In a way that was like a little too low for me.
Fair enough. We can see the power of Windcutter really coming out to play here. It's kind of creating this almost snowball effect in a way, whereby for every turn that Katsu gets to pull off multiple hits on the combat chain, we see more of these Shuriken hit the board, such that there's now kind of an inevitability. The next time that he gets to, that Pudding actually gets to hold some cards in hand and have a combo starter, you can bet it's going to be hitting when there are 2 Shuriken on the board.
Yeah, the Windcutter really represents this slow build-up of inevitability that Katsu gets. The more he gets to chip away at you with those Karachis, the more he gets to later pay it out in the same game by saying, all right, like, my inevitability increases every single time you let me get one of these Shuriken on the board, because after a certain point, you're just not going to be allowed to play around my tricks anymore. And, I mean, good thing Damien hasn't tried, because Pudding has had it every turn.
Such as the way of the Ninja Master.
Every turn, Ancestral Empowerment entering the pitch zone.
But in this case, maybe not the ideal hand if we're seeing a card as powerful as that hit the pitch zone as a red for but a single resource. In this case, I get the feeling that Pudding is going to have to work a little bit harder to string this turn together, which means it might be time for Damien to make a little bit of a comeback on the turn. Ooh, this is a pretty spicy including the Katsu list. Yeah, this is not something that I've seen for a really long time.
Looks like we're gonna see 4 block from Damien. Another Ancestral Empowerment? Tiger, kinda, sorta. Tiger and Reflex.
Oh my lord! It's Ancestrals all the way down, folks. What I find quite interesting here is that in a hand where both Ancestral and Tigrine Reflex were in hand, Pudding chose to pitch the Ancestral rather than pitch the Tigrine Reflex. It makes me wonder about his kind of like evaluations of the use cases of the card. Maybe playing around the variance of drawing a non-zero cost card off Ancestral Empowerment. Brings in some really interesting questions about how to best utilize these cards to minimize the kind of variance and ensure that you are pulling off the combos that you want.
The more tricks, the better. Looks like Damien just gonna cash in this 0-cost Evo here for a little bit of extra life. Essentially cantripping, since it's in the banished zone and free. So using Teklo's ability to draw a card to replace the one pitched to equip this. 0 card 1 in essence. Interesting. Choosing not to block there, maybe gaining some information that made him want to keep cards.
Perhaps suggest that there could be one of those powerful tanks in the hand, something like a War Machine, or that's what's been hiding in the arsenal all this time. A War Machine waiting for enough Evos to be equipped such that is a truly menacing threat. In this case, threatening Pudding's arsenal.
Overpower. Maybe a more reasonable block than one might think for Pudding, given how many things like Ancestral Empowerment are in the deck, but is Arsenal just a Mugenshi release? Maybe not a card he was so attached to, especially with Teklo at 12 life. Maybe Pudding smells blood in the water and is just looking to close the game with his 4-card hand.
Also, we need to draw attention to the fact that while the life totals are ticking down, there is a very important piece of equipment that is still on the board. The Mask of the Pouncing Lynx, perhaps one of the most threatening pieces of equipment for these burst kind of combo turns of damage that suggests that Pudding has access to a lot of damage on the turn that he gets to pop that mask.
Is kind of the scary thing about playing these games where Ninja continually chips you down and gets you lower and lower and lower. While Lynx remains on the board, you kind of have to play Lynx's game at some point, you know? If you just let Lynx sit there the whole game, you eventually reach a game state kind of like this one where you're at 11 and you just can't really take any hits because it'll just slam the door in your face instantly.
I think this might be the point of disaster, Ellie. We are seeing at this point what looks like a Teklo activation to be able to equip some Evo arms from the arsenal, but this Descendant Gust Wave is not just coming in for 3 with Go Again. It is coming in for 3 with Go Again, backed up by those 2 Silverwind Shuriken on the board. Being a Descendant Gust Wave means that Damien can easily access a Bonds of Ancestry. His third and that Pudding can access his third and final Bonds of Ancestry to close out this game with the assistance of Mask of the Pouncing Lynx. But it looks like he's choosing not to use the Shuriken here, saying, you know what? This hand is not ready. This hand is just not ready for it. Again, maybe giving a little bit of breathing room.
Damien has 2 cards to work with here. Almost a full suite of Evos, still missing some pants, but we know the Singularity's in the bin already.
Oh no, not Teklo missing his pants. That's terrible imagery.
Maybe he could be a caster. You never see below her waist.
True, maybe he could be. In this case, we get to see that Ghost Protocol mainframe coming in for just a 0 for 4, but I mean, that's a blue 0 for 4. Are we really going to be mad about it? It makes me wonder what the last card in Damien's hand is. I also love Wounding Blow. Yeah. It's become the Cup Wounding Blow edition, I guess, or something. In this case, it does make me wonder what Damien's last card in hand is, that he's not able to convert this mainframe as a pitch card. It has to just convert it for 4 damage at the cost of his action point.
Seeing Salt the Wound blocked with is interesting. Pudding didn't seem to think he could convert this card on this turn, but it's usually a great Lynx target.
Maybe suggesting that we're struggling to find the starter on this turn and we just have to take a little bit more of a mid-range turn. Something about the way that Pudding's last 2 turns have played out suggests to me that the hands have not been lining up as smoothly as they did at the beginning of the game. And indeed, at this point, we just see a gust wave of the second wind coming in. Now, while this doesn't have base Go Again, we do need to pay attention to those Breeze Rider boots that could, if Pudding chooses, make... And indeed, I think he might be hovering over them.
I believe he's using the Wind Cutter in the reaction step here.
Did we hit twice before the gust wave hit there? I'm not actually sure if we're able to activate it in that spot.
No.
In any case, Damien now getting access to a full 5 cards in hand. It's been a long time since he's had access to a full grip, meaning that maybe we can actually start to push some value on this turn.
T-Bone for 5, classic banger, finding more Evos off the top, but not in the slot he's looking for.
Indeed. What we really want at this point is to find those Evo legs so we can start sending these kind of tank-like powerful attacks for 9 with Go Again rather than for for 9 rather than for 6. 9 with Overpower rather than 6 with Overpower. That's what we're looking
Metal
for.
Hardcore, kind of the Teklo version of Fast and Furious. 0 for 3 that becomes a good old 0 to 60 if you meet a certain condition. For Fast and Furious, it's cranking. For this card, it is banishing an Evo this turn. Pudding's hand looks just fully inoperable, giving up 2 powerful blue 3 blocks.
And Damien choosing to just refresh the armor suite here. Yeah, I mean, this is... We're really starting to see Teklo regain ground here, kind of regaining a bunch of life effectively by being able to equip this Evo Steel Soul chest plate, which incidentally created 3 resources which he sadly was not able to use.
Kadachi coming in, threatening a 7th of Damien's remaining life total. It is effective to gain some life in armor, but oh, there's the final
There's
Evo
those
slot he's been
boots.
looking for. Gaining life via armor is all well and good, but Kadachi's really threatened that when you're gaining 3 life all at once. You know, you get this temper 3, it's hard to justify blocking a Kadachi with it. So it's still not really a position you're super happy to be in.
Now, one point about this, even though we got to use Teklo ability and play this as an instant, it still was played from hand, so it kind of does represent effectively only 1 value from the card in hand. A little bit of a dangerous position, but it looks like Pudding's hands are just bricking up so much that Damien might be getting away with such a low value proposition on the turn.
4 cards for Teklo to work with, Katsu down to 18, T-Bone for 3, boosting another Evo. Heavy Metal Hardcore coming in for 4, drawing another Evo.
I mean, we can't even make use of all these Evos at this point. We've got to find a way to actually get some value out of all of these. And it looks like we are choosing to equip the beta legs as an instant, drawing a card, looking for just a little bit more push on this turn. I feel like what we're really missing is the opportunity to send something like a Terminator tank or another War Machine. It does not feel like that's what Damien has in Arsenal at this point. It's really hard to get a feel for what is lying in wait there.
He does have 1 for 3 Go Again on the board now, threatening a pretty scarily inevitable weapon now that that Teklo leveler is fully leveled up.
This is it. Pudding has kept 5 cards for a reason here. And because
Getting
the
a
start
Dishonor
of this turn is an Ancestral Harmony, picking up a Dishonor. I'm not even sure if we're going to get to see that Dishonor played out, Ellie, because we are kicking off the turn with a Surging Strike for 4 with Go Again. There are 3 Shuriken on the board. This is an Ancestral Harmony turn. I don't see how Katsu can possibly stack up more damage than what is available to Pudding this turn.
This isn't even Fatigue Teklo, and Pudding just did this for fun.
Blocking for 4 with the Firewall. And thankfully, because this does not have combo, Pudding is not able to... Ooh, this is a really, really important start for Damien to see, because neither of these cards are functional targets for the 3 Silverwind Shurikens on the board, nor are they gaining benefit from the Ancestral Harmony.
Is true, but Pudding still has 2 cards in hand here and links up. I imagine his turn is really far from over. He also has that Dishonor he's capable of playing. Breeze Rider boots still on the board. Damien has a lot of blocking left to do. That's a Become
And
the
there's
Bottle,
that Become the Bottle, which will inherit the name Surging Strike.
I guess it could be Like Water if he really wanted.
If he really wanted it to be. It's true. It's true. Unfortunately, it would not gain Be Like Water's abilities and will happily just take on the name of Pudding's quintessential starter, Surging Strike. Damien thinking carefully about how to navigate the blocking here. Absolutely no damage can leak through on this turn, or it is probably game over.
Still no
Blocking
combo
with a card from
for
hand.
Shuriken. This is Dishonor
Just
for
a
3.
Dishonor for 3.
Threatening 6. Heads up play from Damien here might be to just fold the whole hand. And cover 6 on this, and putting can't go over the top. It's a pretty
what is interesting is that
opportunity.
But what else is interesting is that even if Damien were to block this for 3 and allow putting to go over the top, it would, first of all, not threaten lethal as is. But even if you were then to choose to crack Breeze Rider Brutes, crack Master the Pouncing Lynx, he only has 1 card left in hand to be able to discard to Katsu. And the previous attack on this combat chain is not one that is going to allow him to either enable Retrace the Blast nor to enable Bonds of Ancestry. I think this might be a situation in which Damien can get away with skimping a little bit on the block.
Interesting. It looks like he's blocking 3 on 4 here. He put the head on the combat chain. It looks like putting is just going to snap off Katsu Lynx and Breeze Riders here. He definitely has a plan. Maybe just going to go get a 0-0 for 4.
I mean, it's true. We are still on an Ancestral Harmony turn. We could be seeing a lot of damage come through.
He totally just still can fire off his last bonds here, actually. He can just Lynx for a Gust Wave and discard for a bonds, but it actually is just this tenacity he's going to go get.
Okay, that'll do. That'll do.
That certainly will do. Getting a Fluster Fist, coming in for 5 with go again, thanks to Breezy's. 2 Shuriken on the board, promising the end of this game. Before we even get to the tenacity, his last card in hand is a 1 block. That's going to do it.
A measly 1 block, which means that card
that would have been a 9 power tenacity that never saw the light of day.
Oh my, and to think all of that just came from the idea of stacking up those shurikens, patiently waiting. Now, I think there's a degree to which Pudding almost got punished for choosing to wait that long, ending up with some pretty clunky hands towards the end of the game, which gave Damien a lot of room to start to kind of re-enter the tempo race. But at the end of the day, when you manage to stack 3 shuriken and an Ancestral Harmony, it is going to be pretty hard to not hit at least once and then pull off, as we saw, the ability to cash in the armor, cash in the boots, cash in the Katsu ability, and end up with this ridiculously huge combat chain and damage output.
He kind of just created this full checkmate scenario where his opponent just had to keep blocking and blocking and blocking to deny that Lynx trigger, because otherwise it's certain death. And then once he finally comes over the top, oops, tenacity for 10, stupid.
Stupid? Oh my god. Damien getting called stupid on the TheCardGuyz stream?
Man.
Truly a first. This has never happened before. Thank you very much, players. That was an incredible game to watch from both sides. I think we really got to see both of the innovations in your deck list kind of popping off. I want to start with Ellie. Oh, I wanted to start with talking about Teklo boss and like Damien. The first thing we saw you do in this game was play a 0 for 4 go again that drew a card. Like, is Boost Boston a thing now?
Yeah, it kind of is. I really needed the hand to do more than that because I drew 4 reds in my starting hand, and I was like, oh, this hand sucks. But yeah, I think boosting evos is probably like the most powerful thing you could do with the deck. And just like
just before the game started, we were talking about how any 0 for 4 that boosts an evo, that's just Saber Bloodshed. Like, we got there.
Yeah, your first action of the game was Saber Bloodshed, and they didn't even have to be marked. They didn't even have to be marked, Ellie. It was so free.
I think that as the game got a little longer, we really got to see the power of the Teklo deck start to come together. You obviously couldn't quite get there, but you did start to see the newer tools kind of start to compound as Teklo put more and more pieces on the board. You definitely started to like do some really powerful things in spite of some pretty awkward starts. As the Evos started to hit the board, we hit things like the War Machine, the online Teklo leveler, and the zero-cost Evos that discount the Steel Souls just end up really, really smoothing that along, especially in the early game.
Yes. I didn't have a lot of Evos at the start of the game. They all came at the end of the game, and that's when you actually get to start playing a bunch of your cards. I never did get to overlay the headpiece of Gate 5 Intellect. That would have been pretty big turning point.
That would have been pretty good against
Yeah.
Katsu.
I was thinking that was kind of the missing link in here. I think that's kind of one of the most powerful things that these beta Evo pieces have enabled, which is like you get to enable the Steel Soul abilities. Sure, 3 resources now and then is fine, and an extra action point is cool. But the real one that we're all aiming for is that headpiece. Being able to gain a whole extra intellect is such a critical part of the deck list. So we unfortunately didn't get to see that synergy play out today. But tons of synergy in the amount of boosting and drawing extra cards, culminating in some powerful war machines and getting the whole equipment suite online, sending an Evo mainframe for like a blue 0 for 4. I mean, some pretty impressive stuff on display by the end of that game. Meanwhile, from Katsu's side, I mean, Pudding, that was you really sold me on Windcutter in that game. That was an equipment that I was pretty dubious of before the release of Compendium, but holy crap, you made Windcutter look awesome. What was the what took you towards building Katsu in this way?
Okay, speaking of Katsu, I can talk it all day long, but okay, the Windcutter is something that I really wish they played it, is something that the tools we can have against those defense-heavy deck, like Guardians.
Yeah.
So one breaking scale is always scary. What if we have 3, right?
Yes.
So, as you can see, I pack in the Law of Wind and Release combo. Sadly, I can't pull it off. And with that combo, in some matchup, you can recycle all your Certain Strike and your Woman Gateway into your deck, or maybe even a second release. So you have a chance to play 2 release activated with all the Shuriken you bring back, you bring into battlefield with the Windcutters. And the amazing part is, now Katsu is without Ask of War, and sometimes you will get fatigued by yourself.
So, because of all the discarding.
True.
Yes. So now the main combo we have is double bonds, a harmony into double bonds into retrace, main open the center, and then play a first phase. So that's around 40 plus damage. So what if we can have 1 or 2 Ancestral Harmony, and we play a release, so we search for 3 Law of Wind, and each Law of Wind is coming for 3. So the release is coming for 5, plus the Harmony is coming for 6, and the 9 coming from the Law of Wind. On top of that, you have 3 plus 1 reaction to make it get through all the armor and reactions.
You kind of set up this second smaller combo turn to get over the last bit of health they have left after your 40 damage double bonds turn.
Yeah, it is. And normally when you play all the double bonds or the release Law of Wind combo, your opponent go to single digit, you can just Kotachi lock them. B, you can recycle all your Certain Strike and your Gust Wave, and you just keep the pressure on.
Pretty cool. That's super duper insightful, actually. I don't know Katsu very well, so I definitely had some questions about, like, these tools are obviously powerful, but how do they come together? You didn't necessarily talk so much about Tigrine Reflex. What do you think of that card? It seems crazy.
That card is so good. It's good into not just the defensive matchup, especially in the aggro matchup. So everyone play Katsu know how good is Ancestral Empowerment. Now we have 6 copy of it.
Yeah.
So whenever you play a Go Again card, you discard this one, you gain +1, you get the Tiger, and you just discard it for the search. And if you search for a 0 for 4 combo card for the bottom line, this card is a 0 for 5. It's a Lava Burst in reaction.
And you in some ways, it's better than Empowerment because the Tiger you can always discard instead of drawing like a Certain Strike or something. Yeah, you never live.
Yeah. Of course, the downside is to block, and you can basically never go again with that. But I just can't think of any reason you don't run 3 of it.
It seems really powerful.
And also, there's one more card in the news set. Oh, sorry. Yeah. It's the one that 0 for 3 go again, become the bottle. When you play, you can copy.
the bottle.
Yes. we can copy the other combat chain, the name, and the greater part is it's a natural go again. It's a starter, but when it's your combo turn, it can be your second gust wave. So what I say, the biggest combo we can pull off now is the double bonds into retrace into a first surface, right? So in that combo, we need 2 gust wave to make it off, and become the bottle can be one of our gust wave. So that means we have kind of like we have the more gust wave, the gust wave 9.0 in our deck, and also with other build with Edge of Autumn, you can do something really cool about it. Like if you pitch a blue, you send your Edge of Autumn to play
you can
become the
destroy
bottle.
it because you name it Edge of Autumn,
Yes.
right?
Yeah, you name it Edge of Autumn and then banish it to your Sky Wrap, which is kind of sick.
It is so sick and so much fun with this card.
I think it is by far one of like the coolest ninja cards. Honestly, one of the coolest like commons out of the whole set. But for me, it's between it and like Duty Bound Blitz. Those two are like the most jaw-dropping commons to come out of the set. Like, you put on an absolute class with the deck there in terms of finding like your hands were breaking up a little bit towards the end of the game, but having that setup of the 3 shurikens in play with your opponent at such low life being able to go at the end. Oh, it's just dishonor for 3. It's not even online. And then sitting on those 3 shuriken in the back going, pop. And by the way, here's a tenacity for 9. Completely ridiculous output at the end
He died
of the
before
turn.
he even got to the tenacity.
It's true. It's true. Damien, why couldn't you have drawn a 3 block? I have one more question for going back to Wind Cutter. The Wind Cutter obviously can fetch any shuriken, and currently we only have one in the game of Flesh and Blood. But I do wonder if it's a design space that they're going to expand upon. If you could design a certain shuriken effect, what's the next shuriken you'd want to see Katsu have access to with Wind Cutter?
I hope it can be something related to the OG combo line, the Mugen they released. And it could be a very powerful effect with legendaries, but you can tutor, right? And maybe something that you can make the release line more reliable in this matter, because I think a lot of people are dropping them just because it's not good enough and it's so hard to get through all the armors and different reaction. But let's say if you have a shuriken that said your opponent can't play reaction in this chain lane or something like that.
Ooh, yeah, that would go crazy. I was thinking simpler. I was like a shuriken that gives something a name. But then again, Katsu's so good at giving things names now. Maybe he doesn't even need that. Maybe that's the kind of sauce he needs. I guess time will tell. We're gonna see what shurikens LSS has in store for us in the future. But I do think we're gonna see some. So keep an eye out for them, folks. Thank you very much for an incredible final game. That was a real nail biter to finish out the day. Some fantastic brews from you both, and we really enjoyed watching it as casters. We hope everyone at home enjoyed watching it as our audience. Best of luck with the next brews and with your ProQuest season to come, folks. All right, Ellie. It's been a long night, but we have made it to the end of 5 rounds with TheCardGuyz just about getting the 3-2 win, with Team Blue Pitch putting up some pretty impressive showings, both in Silver Age and in Classic Constructed. But we've seen a lot of stuff tonight. What were the highlights for you?
I thought the Kano Enigma game in Sage was actually like super duper interesting and close and fun. I feel like half of the things I was the most excited about was just like Silver Age being fun and cool and exciting. I'm quite fond of that format. Obviously, I'm honored to have Josh play my Boltyn deck after as a continuation of the Super Slam thing. And also just like having somebody show me the power of Wind Cutter.
Absolutely. I think today was a real masterclass in some of the ways that Compendium has opened up deck building for many heroes with actually just a handful of cards. It was a set that has offered us so many reprints, both in terms of the generic staples, your Command and Conquerors and Light and Strikes, Crown of Providence, cards which are constantly cycling in and out of constructed play. I mean, I can't think of many decks that don't at least want to have some access to Command and Conquer in their 80, or at least as a deck building option for a given metagame. So reducing the price of those has been such a big deal. But I think for me, just like seeing Become the Bottle played in so many different ways today, and really understanding the power of that card is like, it had some magic to it there. That felt like a really magical design that reminded me of the ways that we had designs printed back in like the peak of expansion set era, like Everfest. So expansion sets were so back. Some cool brewing opportunities. Silver Age is a really cool format. I was kind of dooming on it when we were first seeing the set, but the more I played it, the more I was like, there's something in here. It's not it maybe it isn't perfect yet. I think there's still room for the format to grow, both as players discovering the metagame and maybe for some overtuned cards to leave the format, or new cards to kind of challenge those cards which we currently see as overtuned. But for the most part, you know what? 20 Life Fab is in a pretty good place. I do miss draft though. I look forward to having draft back.
I think I do miss draft. I kind of agree. I feel like Sage will definitely be at its best after the first round of hero bannings. I feel like obviously taking Chain out back was the right decision, but I do kind of think that there's like 2 to 3 heroes that I think the format would largely be better off without. I will not say so as to not influence anyone's voting process. I feel like that's like a misuse of the platform.
That's true. That's true. Those decisions will be in our community hands to figure out what they don't want to be seeing as we proceed through the Silver Age metagame.
Yeah. But I think the format will be a lot healthier once a couple folks leave.
Thoroughly agreed. Well, it has been an incredible early look at the format. There is so much more room to explore. And for our viewers out there, there is so much room for you to be exploring what you can do with Compendium of Rathe between ProQuest events of both Silver Age and Classic Constructed, and of course, the World Tour. I will certainly be at Calling to Lose happening in March, which I'm super looking forward to as one of my first peeks at the Classic Constructed metagame and getting to test my mettle a little bit out there. It's been so wonderful to cast with you, Ellie. Where can people find you, find your work, in case they want to hear more from you?
You can find me on Blue Sky as Ellybird, ELLYBIRD, like chirp chirp, .bsky.social. That is largely where you can find me. You can also find me on official LSS streams coming up as soon as Calling Montreal. Looking forward to that in just a couple weeks. Nice to have a calling in my present place of residence. Really looking forward to that. Really stoked about that, actually. I hear Montreal is super beautiful, and I haven't gotten to go there yet. So, just another play the game, see the world moment. Really looking forward to that. If you ever see me at an event, please come say hi. I enjoy meeting people, chatting, playing games if I have time. I love all of it.
It sounds like an exciting travel opportunity indeed to play the game and see the world. And I believe it will be our first peek at the Classic Constructed metagame post Compendium of Rathe release. So make sure you get a look at that one, folks, if you want to be well equipped for your ProQuest season. As for myself, you can find me on Blue Sky. I think it's shamirsami.bisky.social. On Twitter, when I feel like doom scrolling. You can find me as a member of Team Sigil, who are in the works of putting out some content following our success at the Calling in London very recently in Silver with our Decimator Dory deck tech brew. So keep an eye out for that one. And of course, if you happen to be at Calling to Lose, come say hi. I love meeting new folks from all around the world to play games in flesh and blood. It has been wonderful to cast with you tonight, Ellie, and I look forward to when I see you next. Until next time, folks, have a good night, and we'll see you soon.